Hey guys, tonight we are going on a bit of a strange journey. We're diving into the history of chocolate, but not the sweet, creamy, melt in your mouth stuff you're probably thinking of. No, we're going back to the source, to a time when chocolate was bitter, spicy, and about as comforting as a shot of espresso right before bed. It's the story of how a sacred, stimulating brew for Aztec warriors somehow became our go-to comfort food. A little heads up. If you were dropped into this story, the original version of hot chocolate would probably make you cry, and not in a good way. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Your support truly means the world. And while you're at it, drop a comment below and let me know what city you're listening from, and what time it is for you. It's always a quiet thrill for me to see how this little community spans across the globe in time zones. Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum. And let's ease into tonight's journey together. The air is thick. So thick you can almost drink it. It's warm, humid, and clings to your skin like a damp blanket. The sounds of the rainforest are a constant, layered symphony. The whirring of insects you can't see. The distant call of an exotic bird, the rustle of leaves from some small creature scurrying away from your clumsy, out-of-place footsteps. Sunlight struggles to pierce the dense canopy above, reaching the forest floor in shifting, dapple patches. You're not in your world anymore. The year is somewhere around 1500, and you are deep in the heart of Mesoamerica. You follow a local guide, a man whose movements are as fluid and silent as the shadows themselves. He carries a long, sharp blade, but not for protection. HES on a mission. He leads you away from the clear paths, deeper into the tangled undergrowth. He stops, holding up a hand for you to be still, and points. You follow his gaze, and at first, you don't see anything special, just another tree. But then you look closer. This tree is strange. Growing directly from its main trunk and thickest branches are these odd, pod-like fruits. They don't hang from delicate stems at the end of twigs. They erupt right out of the bark, like colorful barnacles. This is a botanical curiosity known as cauliflory. And frankly, they look a bit like alien life forms clinging to the tree. The pods are large, about the size of a small American football, and they come in a variety of colors: deep reds, rich purples, vibrant yellows, and mottled greens. Their skin is tough and ribbed. Your guide gestures with a reverence that seems almost out of place for a simple fruit. This, he communicates without words, is special. This is the cacao tree, or as the botanists would later name it, the Obama cacao, and that name is a major clue. A direct translation from the Greek, food of the gods. This is the central, mainstream historical fact of its origin. For the peoples of this land, the Aztecs, and the Maya and Olmecs before them, this was not just a plant. It was a divine gift, a source of power, wisdom, and connection to the spiritual world. But where did this reverence begin? Who was the first person to look at this weird tree and think, I bet there's something amazing in there? Well, that's a question historians and botanists are still in a heated debate about. For a long time, the consensus was that the Olmec civilization, flourishing around 1500 BC, in the lowlands of south-central Mexico, were the first to domesticate the cacao tree. But more recent genetic studies and archaeological findings, like ancient pottery with cacao residue, suggest the story might be much older and start much further south. Some now argue that cacao was first cultivated as far back as 5,000 years ago in the upper Amazon basin, in what is now Ecuador, and only later made its way north to Central America. The trail of evidence is faint, scattered across millennia and dense jungle, leaving a delicious mystery at the very root of our story. Your guide selects a ripe, purplish pod and, with a swift, practiced motion, cracks it open with his blade. You lean in, expecting the rich, familiar smell of chocolate. You get nothing of the sort. The inside is a shock. It's not brown and earthy. Instead, the dark, Almond-sized beans are nestled in a bed of white, almost slimy, fishy pulp. He scrapes a bit of the pulp out with his finger and offers it to you. Hesitantly, you taste it. It's surprisingly delicious, sweet and tangy, with a complex flavor somewhere between a lychee, a mango, and a citrus fruit. In fact, for a long time, it was likely this pulp that was most valued, fermented to create a mildly alcoholic beverage. But the real treasure, the food of the gods, isn't this sweet pulp. It's the beans hidden within. Your guide picks one out for you. It's purplish, and if you were to bite into it now, it would be intensely bitter and chalky, unpleasant. Holding this single, unimpressive bean in your palm, you can feel the weight of its potential. It contains no hint of the global phenomenon it will become. Its journey from this bitter seed in a humid rainforest to a bar of sweet silk in your hands is a long, complicated, and frankly, improbable one. The sun is dipping lower, casting long shadows. The real work, and the real magic, is about to begin. The journey of those beans from the pod to a drink is not a quick one. Your guide leads you from the rainforest twilight into a small, sun-drenched clearing, part of a quiet settlement. Here, the process unfolds with a patience that feels ancient. You see a large, cello basket lined with banana leaves, already filled with a heap of the white, pulpy masses of cacao beans. The pile is humming with life, and a faint, sweet, slightly vinegary smell hangs in the air. The smell of fermentation. For several days, the beans will sit here, the pulp breaking down, generating heat that fundamentally transforms the bean within, developing the very precursors of that flavor we now call chocolate. It's a crucial first step, a controlled rot that gives birth to flavor. After fermenting, the now brownish beans are spread out on woven mats under the relentless sun. Villagers turn them over periodically with their hands or feet, ensuring they dry evenly. The process is slow, dictated by the weather, and a single rain shower at the wrong time could ruin a precious harvest. As you watch, you realize this isn't just agriculture. It's a careful, multi-stage ritual. Once dried, a portion of the beans is handed to an old woman who sits before a low, crackling fire. She nods at you, her face a beautiful map of wrinkles, and gestures toward the flat clay griddle, a tumult resting over the flames. She scatters a handful of the dark, hardened beans onto the hot surface. A new aroma begins to fill the air. For the first time, something is vaguely familiar. It's not the sweet smell of a candy bar, but something deeper, rosier, and smoky. It's the smell of roasting. As she stirs them with a small wooden stick, the beans begin to pop and crackle softly, their thin outer husks becoming brittle and loose. She pulls the roasted beans from the heat and, once they're cool enough to handle, shows you how to rub them between your palms. The papery husks flake away easily, revealing the dark, fragmented inner bean, what we now call cacao nibs. This is the heart of the matter. Then now, the real work begins. You're invited to kneel before a metate, a trough-shaped grinding stone made from volcanic rock, worn smooth from generations of use. You're handed the stone rolling pin, the mano, and a small pile of nibs is placed on the stone. You begin to grind, pushing and rolling the mano over the nibs. It is astonishingly difficult work. At first, the nibs just crack into smaller, gritty pieces. But as you continue to grind, the friction generates heat. The high amount of natural fat in the beans, the cocoa butter, begins to melt. The dry, gritty shards slowly, miraculously, transform into a thick, coarse, and oily paste. You're armsy, and you're barely making a dent in the pile. The woman smiles, takes over, and with an effortless, rhythmic motion, grinds the rest into a dark, fragrant mass. This is cacao liquor, in its most raw and powerful form. This paste is then scraped into a large, ornate clay jug. Water is added, and then come the ingredients that would horrify a modern cooklattery. A spoonful of finely ground red chili pepper, a scoop of maize, or cornmeal, not for flavor, but to act as a thickener and emulsifier. And here's where the historical record gets a bit fuzzy, a topic still debated by food historians and archaeologists. What else went in the pot? Some accounts from the era mention adding vanilla, a native orchid of the region. Others described specific, fragrant flowers being mixed in, some of which lent a peppery or clove-like note. For certain ceremonies, they might have added cacao or annatto seed, which did little for the flavor but gave the drink a dramatic, blood-red color. The recipe was not fixed. It was a fluid art, changing with the seasons, the village, and the purpose of the drink. But the final step in the preparation is the most important and the most theatrical. Your guide takes the jug of murky, brown liquid into second, empty vessel. He begins to pour the mixture from one jug to the other. He starts slow, then raises the pouring jug higher and higher, a steady stream hitting the pot below from a height of 3 or 4 feet. It's a mesmerizing display of skill. The goal of this repeated pouring isn't just to mix the ingredients. It's to create the most prized part of the entire drink. The froth, a thick, stable, and luxurious head of foam was the mark of a perfectly prepared beverage. This foam, called turpali, was considered the essence of the drink, a delight for the gods and nobles. Finally, a portion of the finished product is poured into a small, decorated gourd, and it is handed to you. The thick foam sits proudly on top. The drink itself is not steaming hot, but lukewarm, or sometimes even served cold. You lift it to your lips. The aroma is earthy, with a hint of spice. You take your first sip. It is a shock to the system. There is zero sweetness. The first sensation is an intense, almost aggressive bitterness, followed by a grainy, slightly lumpy texture from the maize and the imperfectly ground cacao. Then, a slow, creeping heat from the chili pepper begins to bloom at the back of your throat. It's oily on the tongue from the unmoved cocoa butter. This is exocolatl. The word itself, from the Aztec language nayutl, is believed to mean bitter water. They weren't kidding. You lower the gourd, your mind reeling. This is not a comforting, cozy drink. It feels more like a punishment, or perhaps a potent, unfamiliar medicine. And the question that burns in your mind, even more than the chili on your tongue, is why? Why on earth would anyone go to all this trouble for this? Your guide watches your bewildered expression with a knowing look. He seems to understand your confusion. This bitter, spicy concoction isn't for comfort. It isn't for dessert. Its value lies into domains that are far more important in his world. Its power is a form of currency, and its effect is a potent stimulant. He motions for you to follow him toward the heart of the settlement, a small but bustling marketplace. The air is filled with 100 different smells. The sweet scent of ripe tropical fruits, the earthy aroma of fresh maize, the smoky hint of cooking fires. People are bartering for goods, their voices weaving a complex tapestry of commerce. You see a woman trading a beautifully woven blanket for a pair of live turkeys. A man exchanges obsidian tools for a stack of salted fish. And everywhere you look, you see them, cacao beans. They're not being prepared for a drink here. They are being counted. This is the first, and perhaps most startling, revelation. In the Aztec Empire, cacao beans were a standardized form of currency. This is a well-documented historical fact. The beans were small, portable, and relatively uniform, making them a perfect medium of exchange in an economy that lacked metal coinage. You watch as a farmer carefully counts out a specific number of beans from a small cloth bag to pay for a large clay pot. It's a transaction as normal as you pulling a few dollars from your wallet. The exchange rates were surprisingly well defined. A large tomato might cost you 1 cacao bean. You could get a single turkey egg for 3 beans. A full-grown rabbit was worth about 30 beans, while a whole turkey would set you back around 100. For the truly wealthy, there were standardized sacks containing a specific number of beans, roughly 8. Ajaro, which was called a shiki pilai. The state tribute demanded from conquered territories was often paid in these sacks of cacao beans, which flowed into the Aztec capital of Tenochtitlan. filling the emperor's coffers. To you, they are potential chocolate. To them, they are money. It's as if you discovered that coffee beans could be used at the ATM. This use as currency led to a rather amusing and very human problem: counterfeiting. This is a strange little side note in the history of chocolate. Unscrupulous merchants would sometimes create fake cacao beans to pass off to unsuspecting buyers. They would take avocado bits and cleverly sculpt them into the shape of a cacao bean. Others would hollow out a real cacao bean, fill it with packed earth or clay, and carefully seal it back up. From the outside, it looked and felt like the real thing, but it was utterly worthless. Spanish chroniclers, writing after the conquest, noted this practice with a kind of bemused fascination, documenting one of the world's earliest forms of food fraud. But the bean's value wasn't just in its use as money. You noticed the men in the market, the porters carrying heavy loads, the merchants who have traveled long distances. Many of them are not drinking the frothy brew you tried earlier, but are instead simply chewing on a few roasted cacao beans. Your guide explains, the beans contain something that gives them strength, that wards off fatigue and sharpens the mind. This brings us to the second reason for its value. The drink was not a casual beverage for everyone. It was primarily consumed by the elite, nobles, priests, and decorated warriors. For them, it was a stimulant, a source of energy and vitality. It was, in essence, their version of a triple-shot espresso. The active compound responsible for this effect, as we now know, is theobromine. It's a chemical cousin to caffeine, but with a milder, more sustained, and less jittery effect on the central nervous system. It increases heart rate and acts as a vasodilator, widening blood vessels and increasing blood flow. For an Aztec, this wasn't just a feeling. It was a tangible boost in physical and mental stamina. Historians are still debating the full extent of its ritualistic and daily use. Was it an everyday morning beverage for the upper class, like our cup of coffee, or was it reserved more for specific occasions, like religious ceremonies, political meetings, and preparations for battle? The Spanish accounts, which are our main written sources, can be contradictory. Some describe the Emperor Montezuma drinking it prodigiously throughout the day, while others frame it as a more sacred, ceremonial substance. The truth is likely somewhere in between, a versatile substance whose role shifted depending on the context. As you stand in the marketplace, watching beans change hands, you start to understand the bitterness you tasted wasn't a flaw. It was a feature. It was the taste of power. The spicy heat wasn't a culinary mistake. It was part of its invigorating identity. This drink wasn't meant to lull you to sleep. It was meant to wake you up, to fuel an empire, to pay for its goods, and to prepare its soldiers for the harsh realities of their world. It was a tool, a drug, and a currency, all rolled into one bitter, gritty, and profoundly important bean. The gourd of cacao, a TL you tried earlier, suddenly makes more sense. It wasn't a failed dessert. It was a success in every way they intended. The sun is low on the horizon now, casting the world in hues of orange and deep purple. The sounds of the marketplace have faded, replaced by a low, rhythmic drumming that seems to emanate from a large communal building at the edge of the settlement. There's a tension in the air, a sense of focused energy. Your guide gestures for you to follow, his expression now serious. Tonight is not a night for commerce or quiet ritual. It is a night of preparation. You enter a large, smoky hall, the air thick with the scent of burning copal incense and roasting cacao. The room is filled with men. These are not farmers or merchants. They are warriors. Their bodies are lean and powerful, painted with intricate designs in black and red. They are checking their weapons. The Macue Hutel, a wooden club embedded with razor-sharp obsidian blades. In the Kaimolai, their decorated shields. They move with a quiet, deadly purpose. Tomorrow, they march to a border skirmish, a flower war, a ritualized battle intended to capture prisoners for sacrifice rather than to conquer territory. But ritualized or not, the danger is very real. In the center of the hall, Several women are performing the same mesmerizing, high-pour technique you saw earlier, creating vast quantities of frothy cacao. The clay jugs they use are larger, the production more urgent. There is no time for the delicate gourd cups of a nobleman's feast. The drink is being ladled into simple, sturdy clay mugs. One of the senior warriors, a man with a jaguar pelt cloak signifying his high rank, approaches you. He sees you not as a threat, but as a strange, pale curiosity. He offers you a mug. To refuse would be a grave insult. You take it, the rough clay warm in your hands. This is not a social pleasantry. It's a ration. This is their fuel for the coming ordeal. You drink. The taste is just as shocking as before, maybe even more so. This batch is less about nuance and more about raw power. The chilly heat is more pronounced. A sharp kick went to jolt the senses. The bitterness is deep and resonant. There's little of the cornmeal thickener. It's a thinner, more potent brew. It's not meant to be savored. You watch the warriors around you down it in a few quick, functional gulps, like soldiers taking a shot of potent spirits before a charge. As the bitter liquid hits your system, you begin to feel it. It's not a caffeine buzz, that frantic edge of your seat energy. It's a slow, rising tide of alertness. The fatigue from your day of exploring seems to melt away. Your senses feel sharper. The drumbeat seems clearer. The smoky air more distinct. This is the Theo-Brahman at work, a key historical reason for its consumption by the military elite. It was, for all intents and purposes, a pre-battle performance enhancer. It didn't make them stronger, but it allowed them to access their strength for longer, to fight off the exhaustion and fear that could dull a warrior's edge in the heat of combat. And they didn't just drink it. A fascinating and slightly bizarre bit of battlefield knowledge is that cacao was also a component in their version of an MRE, meal, ready to eat. Warriors would carry small wafers or pellets made from compacted, ground cacao paste mixed with maize. These were lightweight, nutrient-dense, and packed with that all-important stimulant. On a long march or in the midst of a campaign, a warrior could simply nibble on one of these energy bars to sustain himself. It was a perfect military food, stable, portable, and effective. As the warriors finish their preparations, a priest enters the hall. He begins to chant, his voice a low monotone that fills the space. He speaks of Aztec, the god of sun and war, and of the sacred duty of the warrior. He holds up a vessel of cacao, its foam catching the firelight. Here, the drink transcends its role as a mere stimulant. It becomes a sacrament, a divine substance that connects the warrior to the gods they fight for. By drinking it, they are not just energizing their bodies, they are stealing their spirits. But just how widespread was this practice? This is another point of academic discussion. Did every single Aztec warrior drink chocolate before battle? Or was it a privilege reserved only for the elite jaguar and eagle warriors? The special forces of their day, their codices, the illustrated manuscripts created by the Aztecs, often depict high-ranking individuals consuming cacao. But the life of the common soldier is less clearly documented. Some historians argue that its high value as currency would have made it too expensive for the rank and file. Others suggest that in times of war, the state would have distributed it more widely as a strategic resource. We see glimpses of the truth in Spanish accounts, but they were outsiders looking in, often misunderstanding the nuances of the culture they were witnessing. The drumming grows louder, more insistent. The men begin to form ranks, their faces set like stone. The effects of the exocolatl are coursing through your veins now. You feel awake, alert, and deeply, profoundly out of your element. You are not a warrior. You are just a spectator, powered by their strange, bitter fuel. You hold the empty clay mug, the lingering taste of chili and earth on your tongue. As you watch them march out into the darkness, you understand that this drink was never meant to be comforting. It was a tool of power, a sacred rite, and a weapon of war, all dissolved into a single, frothy, bitter cup. It was the furthest thing from a bedtime drink that has ever existed. The world of the common soldier fades away, and you find yourself transported to a place of unimaginable splendor. You are no longer in a smoky barracks on the frontier, but in the heart of the Aztec Empire, the great city of Tenochtitlan. It is a breathtaking metropolis built on an island in the middle of a lake, connected to the mainland by massive causeways. Towering pyramids and temples pierce the sky, their surfaces painted in brilliant colors. It is a city that rivals, and in some ways surpasses, the great capitals of Europe. You are inside the royal palace, a sprawling complex of apartments, gardens, and courtyards that hums with the quiet efficiency of imperial power. The air here is different, scented with exotic flowers from the royal botanical gardens and the clean smell of water from the canals that crisscross the city. You are a silent, invisible observer in the court of the most powerful man in Mesoamerica, the Emperor Montezuma II. You are led into a vast chamber. Sunlight streams through large openings, illuminating intricate tapestries and walls adorned with jaguar pelts and brilliant feathers. Montezuma is seated on a low, cushioned throne. He is a man in his prime, radiating an aura of absolute authority. He is attended by a coterie of nobles and priests, all moving with a practiced, deferential grace. Servants come and go, bearing platters of food on radiant black lacquered pottery. The feast is a spectacle of imperial wealth. Roasted turkeys, venison, a dazzling array of fruits, and tortillas shaped into eagles and seashells. But your attention is drawn to the drink. Here, in the pinnacle of Aztec society, the preparation and serving of cacao is an art form of the highest order. The women preparing it are specialists. Their movements are refined ballet. The final product is not served in simple clay mugs. Instead, it is presented in the most precious vessels imaginable, cups made of pure gold. These golden goblets, called pasillos by the later Spanish, are tall and elegant, designed to showcase the precious, frothy liquid within. A servant approaches the emperor, kneeling, and offers him one of these golden cups. Montezuma takes sip and drinks. He drinks with purpose, not with the leisurely pace of someone enjoying a beverage, but with the focus of someone consuming a source of vitality. This is the primary historical image we have of Montezuma and chocolate, immortalized by the Spanish chroniclers who witnessed it. They wrote, in a state of awe and some exaggeration, that the emperor consumed dozens of these golden goblets of cacao every single day. One of the most famous accounts, by Bernal Diaz del Castillo, a soldier with Cortez, claimed Montezuma drank over 50 pitchers of it daily. This number, 50 pitchers, is almost certainly a wild overstatement. It's a key point of contention for historians. Was it a literal observation, or was it a chronicler's hyperbole, meant to convey the emperor's immense wealth and virility to a European audience back home? Think about it. That would be an insane amount of a stimulant beverage, likely leading to a state of permanent, agonizing jitters. Most modern historians believe the number was far smaller, but the image of profligate consumption stuck. The stories painted a picture of an emperor who powered his reign on a river of this bitter, frothy liquid, served in golden chalices. As you watch, you notice the variety. The cacao served here is not a single recipe. Different preparations are brought forward. Some are reddish with annatto, perhaps for a specific ritual meaning. Some are thickened with a finer grade of maize flour. Others are intensely perfumed with vanilla or rare, fragrant flowers like tionacazaleti, which add a spicy, lobe shape, or mecazacatal, related to black pepper. The royal pantry was, in essence, a sophisticated chocolate laboratory, constantly creating new blends for the emperor's discerning palate. It was a display of power not just through quantity, but through quality and variety, showcasing his control over the vast resources of the empire. And here lies a strange, almost comical tidbit of royal etiquette. According to some accounts, after Montezuma finished with his golden cup, he didn't hand it back to be washed and reused. He would ceremonially toss it into the lake that surrounded his palace. If true, This would represent a level of conspicuous consumption that is almost impossible to fathom. Imagine a CEO finishing his morning coffee and then casually throwing the expensive ceramic mug out the window of his skyscraper. Again, historians debate whether this was a regular occurrence or a specific ceremonial act witnessed and perhaps misinterpreted by the Spanish. But true or not, the story adds to the mystique, painting a picture of a ruler for whom gold was as disposable as the drink was essential. You watch as Montezuma sets down an empty golden cup. He is not sleepy or relaxed. He is alert, engaged, speaking with his advisors, making the decisions that steer the course of his empire. The Exocoatl is not a luxury in the sense of a decadent treat. It is a true love governance, a liquid manifestation of his stamina and power. The bitterness is the taste of command. The froth is the crown on a drink fit for a king. Looking at the golden cups, the intricate preparations, and the focused consumption, you realize you are witnessing the absolute peak of cacao culture in its native land. It is a substance deeply woven into the fabric of power, religion, and daily imperial life. It has reached its zenith, but standing at the edge of the great hall, unseen by the court, are strange men with pale skin and beards of iron. They are watching, too, and they are about to bring this entire world, and the destiny of this bitter drink, to a sudden and violent turning point. The scene shifts dramatically. The opulent, sunlit halls of Montezuma's palace dissolve, replaced by the chaotic, dusty reality of an armed camp. You are now among the Spanish conquistadors, a small band of adventurers led by the cunning and ambitious Hernan Cortez. They have journeyed far from their world, driven by rumors of gold and a fervent desire to claim this new land for the Spanish crown and the Christian faith. To them, Tenochtitlan is not a wonder of civilization. It is a pagan stronghold, rightful conquest. The air is thick with suspicion and a profound sense of cultural collision. The Spanish are a jarring sight in this landscape, clad in steel armor that glints harshly in the Mexican sun, accompanied by horses, creatures the Aztecs had never seen before. They are guests in Montezuma's city, but their presence feels more like an occupation. During a tense diplomatic feast hosted by the Aztecs, you see it happen. The first documented European tasting of Exocoatl. The Aztecs, in a gesture of high honor, offer the drink to their guests. A servant presents a golden goblet, identical to the ones you saw Montezuma drink from, to a Spanish captain. The captain, a man whose palate is accustomed to the wines of Andalusia and the simple flavors of bread and olive oil, looks at the frothy, murky, brownish liquid with deep suspicion. He sees no sign of fermentation, so it isn't wine or beer. It's served lukewarm, which is unsettling in itself. The color is strange, and the thick foam on top does nothing to reassure him. He sniffs it. The aroma is completely alien. Earthy, a little smoky, with a hint of something spicy that he can't place. He has no frame of reference for this. With his comrades watching, and not wanting to appear weak or insult his host, he takes a tentative sip. His face tells the whole story. It's a mask of confusion, contorting into a grimace of pure disgust. First, the shock of the absolute lack of sweetness. In the European mind of the 16th century, a special beverage was almost always sweet. This is an assault. Then comes the intense, unfamiliar bitterness, a flavor they associate with poison or spoiled food. The grainy texture from the maize is gritty and unpleasant in his mouth. And finally, the slow burning heat of the chili pepper is the final insult. He sputters, trying to hide his reaction, and quickly puts the goblet down. This was the near universal first reaction of the Spanish to the original Aztec chocolate. This is the core historical truth of that initial encounter. They hated it. The letters and chronicles sent back to Spain are filled with descriptions of Exocoatl, and they are really flattering. One of the most famous early descriptions comes from the Italian-born historian Peter Mater d'Anhiere, who, despite never visiting the Americas himself, compiled reports from those who did. He described the drink as more a drink for pigs than for humanity. Another chronicler noted its loathsome appearance in the scum or froth on top. To them, it was a barbaric concoction. Why the intense dislike? It came down to a fundamental clash of culinary philosophies. European cuisine, especially for the elite, prized clarity, purity, and a balance of familiar humors. A drink was supposed to be clear, like wine or water. Exocolatiel was opaque and thick. Flavors were meant to be distinct. Exocolatiel was a confusing jumble of bitter, spicy, and earthy, and most importantly, special drinks were a source of gentle pleasure, not a physical jolt. The stimulating effect, which the Aztecs prize, was just another mark of its strangeness to the Spanish. Here we find a fascinating little nugget of culinary history, the flavor profile clash. The Spanish palate was built on a foundation of salty, sweet, and sour. The Aztec palate, particularly for this ceremonial drink, embraced bitterness as a sign of potency and complexity. This wasn't just a matter of taste. It was a completely different way of understanding what food and drink were supposed to do. The Spanish saw a disgusting, bitter sludge. The Aztecs saw a powerful, divine elixir. The culture gap could be measured in that single sip. There's still some debate among historians about the nuances of this first impression. Did all of them hate it equally? Or were some, perhaps the more adaptable or curious, able to look past the initial shock? The overwhelming documentary evidence points to widespread rejection. The soldiers, the priests, the captains, they just didn't get it. They recognized its importance to the Aztecs, noting the reverence with which it was served in the sheer quantities consumed by the elite. They saw that the beans were used as money, which they certainly understood and respected. But the drink itself, they couldn't get past the taste. As you watch the Spanish captain wipe his mouth, trying to get rid of the lingering aftertaste, a profound irony hangs in the air. He is holding a golden cup, a vessel of immense material value in his eyes, but the liquid inside, which the Aztecs valued even more than the gold, is something he would rather spit on the ground. He sees the container, not the contents. This single moment of disgust should have been the end of the story. Chocolate should have been a historical footnote, a weird, bitter drink consumed by a conquered civilization. It was unpalatable, strange, and tied to a pagan culture the Spanish were eager to erase. By all logic, its journey should have ended right there. But it didn't, and the reason for that can be attributed to one man in that camp, who was watching everything with a keener, more strategic eye. Amidst the chorus of grimacing, sputtering conquistadors, one man stands apart. He is not a captain focused on the next skirmish, nor a priest repulsed by a pagan brew. He is their leader. And Cortez is playing a different game entirely. You watch him as he observes the scene, his expression unreadable. He may have personally disliked the taste of Exocolatial as much as his men did. The records are not explicit about his personal palate, but he saw something they all missed. He saw not a beverage, but an asset. Cortez was a master strategist, a man of incredible cunning and observation. He had spent months in Tenochtitlan, studying the Aztec way of life, not out of idle curiosity, but to find its weaknesses and levers of power. He saw the reverence shown to Exocolatiel. He saw the golden goblets. He saw the emperor's prodigious consumption. But most importantly, he made the connection that eluded his soldiers. He understood the link between the beans and the treasury. He visited the imperial storehouses, and what he found there was not chests of gold and silver, but mountains of cacao beans. This is a crucial, documented moment. Cortez realized that the wealth of the Aztec Empire wasn't just in precious metals. It was in these small, brown beans. He wrote in a letter to King Charles V of Spain about this almond the Aztecs used as money, noting with great interest that a slave could be bought for 100 beans. This was a language he understood perfectly. Gold is valuable, but a self-propagating, agricultural source of currency that literally grows on trees. That was a new and profound kind of wealth. This is where Cortez's genius for long-term strategy comes into play. He looked past the immediate, unpleasant taste and saw the bigger picture. He recognized Exocolatiel as a symbol of power and an instrument of the economy. Conquering the Aztecs meant not just seizing their gold, but also controlling the source of their currency and their most valued commodity. He effectively saw a future where he could control the Aztec Federal Reserve. So, despite the drink's unpalatable nature to the European tongue, Cortés took it seriously. He wasn't interested in it as a potential export for Spanish cafes. He was interested in it as a tool for colonial administration. After the fall of Tenochtitlan, when the Spanish began the arduous process of establishing New Spain, Cortés made a decision that would change the history of food forever. Instead of eradicating the pagan crop, he established cacao plantations, often forcing the subjugated native population to work them. This is the often overlooked dark side of chocolate's journey to Europe. Its first steps into a global market were rooted in the exploitation of colonial labor. A strange little detail from this period is the cacao tribute. Under the new Spanish rule, the indigenous people were still required to pay their taxes to their new overlords. And what did the Spanish demand? Cacao beans. It was a pragmatic choice. The beans were still the functioning currency of the region, so collecting them was the easiest way to extract wealth and fund the administration of the new colony. For a time, Spanish colonists were even paid their salaries in cacao beans. It's a Bowser image, a hardened conquistador, far from home, counting out a pile of bitter beans as his weekly wage. But did Cortés himself ever come to enjoy the drink? This is a question historians can only speculate on. There's an argument to be made that through prolonged exposure, and perhaps by observing its energizing effects, he might have developed a taste for it, or at least an appreciation for its function. It's plausible that he and his inner circle began to drink it for the same reason the Aztec elite did, as a stimulant to ward off fatigue during the grueling work of building a new colony. They were surrounded by it. It was a high-status drink, and its effects were undeniable. It's a classic case of if you can't beat them, join them, but with a colonial twist. The debate hinges on whether his interest remained purely economic or if it ever crossed over into personal consumption. We will likely never know for sure. What is certain is that Cortés's vision was the bridge. Without his strategic and economic understanding, the cacao bean might have remained a piece of Mesoamerican history. His men would have gladly left it behind, remembering it only as a foul concoction. But Cortés saw the beans not for what they tasted like, but for what they were, the lifeblood of a civilization. And he knew that to control the civilization, he had to control its lifeblood. He began to organize the first shipments of cacao beans back to Spain. These were not sent as a potential new foodstuff. They were sent as a curiosity, a sample of the strange wealth of the New World. Destined for the Spanish court, the beans were packed into sacks, loaded onto the same ships carrying looted gold and silver. They were about to embark on a long, perilous journey across the Atlantic, leaving the world that revered them and heading toward a continent that had no idea what to do with them. The bitter drink had found its unlikely champion, a man who didn't love its taste, but adored its power. The year is now sometime in the 1520s. You find yourself on the deck of a Spanish galleon, a massive, creaking wooden base, heaving its way across the vast, unforgiving expanse of the Atlantic Ocean. The journey from the port of Veracruz in New Spain to Seville in Spain is a brutal, months-long ordeal. The air is thick with the smell of salt, dirt, and the close quarters of too many men. The ship groans with every swell of the waves, a constant, unsettling reminder of the sea's power. You make your way down into the ship's hull. It's a dark, cramped, and foul-smelling space. Here, crammed between chests of silver, exotic hardwoods, and cages of brightly colored parrots, are the canvas sacks. They are filled with the dry, fermented cacao beans you saw being prepared back in the Aztec settlement. In this damp, musty environment, they are just another form of cargo, another piece of the New World's wealth being extracted and sent back to the Old. The journey itself is fraught with peril. This is the mainstream reality of transatlantic travel in the 16th century. Storms are a constant threat, capable of tearing a ship to pieces. Pirates and privateers from rival European powers, the English, the French, prowl these shipping lanes, eager to plunder the riches of Spain's new empire. A single encounter with a pirate ship could mean a violent end to the journey, sending the men, the gold, and the strange brown beans to the bottom of the ocean. But even if the ship evades pirates and storms, the cargo faces a more insidious enemy: the journey itself. The hold of a galleon is not a climate-controlled environment. It is damp, humid, and subject to wild temperature swings. For the sacks of cacao, this is a disaster waiting to happen. Mold and mildew are a constant threat, creeping into the sacks and ruining the precious beans. Weevils and other insects, stowaways in the ship's hull, can infest the cargo, turning the beans to dust. A significant portion of any given shipment was likely lost to spoilage before it ever reached the shores of Spain. And here we stumble upon a quirky, lesser-known detail of this first voyage. What did the sailors on these ships think of the beans? They were surrounded by them for months. It's highly probable that, out of curiosity or boredom, they tried to chew on them, just as they saw the natives do. Their reaction was likely the same as the soldiers on land: overwhelming bitterness. But more than that, they would have seen them as utterly useless. The beans were not part of their official rations. You couldn't make bread out of them. You couldn't salt them for preservation. They were just weird, bitter nuts. There are even apocryphal stories of pirates capturing Spanish ships, finding the sacks of cacao, and mistaking them for sheep droppings or some other worthless cargo, simply dumping them overboard in disgust to get to the silver. This highlights the central problem: knowledge transfer. The Spanish had the raw material, but they didn't have the instruction manual. Cortez had sent the beans, but the intricate, multi-step process of turning them into a beverage, the roasting, the grinding, the frothing, was not something that could be easily written down and sent with the cargo. The cultural context was missing, so the first beans that arrived in Spain were a solution without a problem, an ingredient without a recipe. The question of who exactly brought the first successful, documented shipment to the Spanish court is, like so many details in this story, a matter of historical debate. Was it Cortez himself upon one of his returns to Spain? Or was it more likely Dominican friars, who traveled back and forth between the colony and the homeland, who first presented the beans and, crucially, the method of preparation to the Spanish elite? Many historians lean toward the friars. They were scholars and observers, more likely to have taken the time to learn the Aztec process and understand its nuances. They were also trying to understand and convert the native population, which meant studying their culture in depth. Imagine the scene of that first presentation at the Spanish court in Toledo or Valladolid. A sun-weathered friar, just back from the exotic wilds of New Spain, stands before a gathering of bemused Spanish nobles. He presents these strange, dark beings. He then, perhaps with the help of a native servant he brought with him, goes through the laborious process of roasting and grinding. He serves the resulting bitter, spicy, frothy liquid. The reaction of the Spanish courtiers is likely a more polite, but equally confused, version of the soldiers' disgust. They would have tasted it, raised an aristocratic eyebrow, and wondered why anyone would go to such trouble for such a displeasing result. The journey has been completed. The beans have crossed the ocean. They have survived storms, the threat of pirates, and the certainty of spoilage. They have arrived in a new world, a world of castles and cathedrals, of kings and inquisitors. But they are just as alien here as the Spanish were in Tenochtitlan. The bitter drink has reached the shores of Europe, but its conquest of the continent is far from certain. In fact, based on this initial reception, it seems doomed to fail, destined to become a footnote in the annals of exploration. It's in a Spanish monastery, a bitter, challenging puzzle waiting for someone to solve it. The great galleon and the salty air of the open ocean dissolve, and you find yourself in a place of profound quiet. You are within the cool, stone walls of a Spanish monastery, likely somewhere in the sun-baked plains of Extremadura or the rugged hills of Aragon. The year is still uncertain, perhaps the 1542, maybe later. Time moves differently here. measured not by conquests, but by the ringing of bells for prayer and the slow passage of the sun across the cloister garden. The cacao beans have found their first European home here. It makes a certain kind of sense. The monks and friars were the scholars and intellectuals of their age. They had the time, the curiosity, and the resources to study the strange artifacts brought back from the New World. In a quiet, stone-walled kitchen, a brother, whose usual job is to make bread or press wine, is contemplating the puzzle of the cacao bean. He has the instructions, perhaps brought back by a fellow friar from New Spain. He has the tools, a meat, date and mono grinding stone, looking ancient and out of place next to his familiar European copper pots. He has dutifully followed the recipe. He roasted the beans, ground them into a paste, added water, and for the mixture, he may have even added a cautious pinch of chili, as the original recipe dictated. He tastes the result, and, like every Spaniard before him, he recoils. It's bitter, alien, and unpleasant. This is the central problem. The drink, in its pure, Aztec form, is a culinary dead end in Europe. It will not catch on. But this monk has an advantage that the soldiers in the field did not. He is in a Spanish kitchen, a repository of different flavors and culinary traditions. His gaze falls upon the key that will unlock chocolate's future. It's not an exotic spice from the Far East, but a commodity growing in importance for Spain. Sugar. This is the single most important innovation in the history of chocolate. The addition of sugar, produced in vast quantities in Spain's Atlantic island colonies, like the Canaries, often through the brutal use of enslaved labor. Sugar was becoming more accessible to the Spanish elite. The monk, perhaps in a moment of inspiration or desperation, decides to try an experiment. He takes a spoonful of gritty, brownish cane sugar and stirs it into the bitter liquid. He tastes it again. It's bitter. The sugar doesn't just mask the bitterness, it transforms it. The two powerful flavors, bitter and sweet, begin to dance with each other, creating a new, complex, and deeply satisfying sensation. He adds another spoonful. The transformation is profound. The aggressive, medicinal bitterness mellows into a deep, rich foundation, a background note that gives the sweetness character and depth. This is the eureka moment, but the experimentation doesn't stop there. He and his brothers begin to refine the recipe. The chili pepper, it has to go. It's too aggressive, too foreign. They throw it out. What to add instead? They reach for familiar, comforting, and luxurious spices. A stick of cinnamon from Ceylon is dropped into the pot while it heats, infusing the drink with its warm, woody fragrance. They scrape the tiny, precious seeds from a vanilla pod, another treasure from Mexico, but one whose flavor is far more compatible with European tastes. They might add a pinch of nutmeg or a whisper of cloves. Who was this culinary genius? Was it one monk in one monastery, or a gradual discovery made in several places at once? This is a question that history has not answered. Historians and chocolate lovers have tried to pinpoint the exact location. Was it the Monasterio da Piedra in Aragon, which has a strong claim in the 16th century chocolate-making tradition? Was it a group of friars who had lived in Oaxaca and brought the knowledge back? The truth is, the identity of this chocolate Columbus, the person who first added sugar to cacao, is lost to history. It was an anonymous, quiet revolution that happened behind monastery walls. The new drink is a sensation. It is served hot, not lukewarm. It is sweet and comforting, not bitter and challenging. The froth is still prized, but the overall experience is one of luxurious pleasure, not stimulating ritual. The recipe leaks out of the monasteries and into the kitchens of the Spanish nobility. For the better part of a century, from the mid-1500 seconds to the early 1600 seconds, chocolate was Spain's delicious secret. This is a fascinating, little-known fact of globalization. While Spain's military and political dominance was known throughout Europe, its culinary monopoly on chocolate was just as fiercely guarded. They controlled the supply of beans from the colonies, and they held the secret to making it palatable. You are now in a lavish chamber in Madrid. A Spanish noblewoman, dressed in a dark, severe but incredibly expensive gown, is starting her day. Her servant brings her not wine or ale, but a small, steaming cup of the new chocolate drink. She sips it delicately. It is a status symbol, a sign of wealth and connection. It's fashionable, sophisticated, and exclusively Spanish. The stimulating effects of the theobrahmin are still there, a gentle morning lift, but they are now secondary to the sheer pleasure of the taste. The transformation is complete. The food of the gods, the bitter water of warriors, has been tamed, sweetened, and reinvented. It has been stripped of its chili and its blood redonato, and dressed up in sugar and cinnamon. It is no longer exocolatl. It is now chocolate, and it is locked away, a treasured secret of the Spanish court. But secrets this good are impossible to keep forever. The aroma is already starting to drift over the purées. The scene shifts again. You're still within the cool, quiet walls of a Spanish monastery, but the atmosphere is not one of peaceful culinary experimentation. It's dense. You are an invisible witness to a heated, whispered debate between two senior monks. Their brows are furrowed, their gestures animated. They are not arguing about politics or scripture. They are arguing about chocolate. Specifically, they are grappling with a theological question that seems almost absurd to a modern mind, but was of profound importance to them. Does drinking chocolate break the fast? This was the central, mainstream religious controversy surrounding chocolate in the 16th and 17th centuries. The Catholic calendar was filled with fast days, most notably Lent, the 40-day period before Easter. During a fast, believers were expected to abstain from food, particularly rich foods and meat, to purify the body and soul. The rules were strict and taken very seriously. The question was, what constituted food? One of the monks, a stern traditionalist, argues forcefully. He points to the rich, thick nature of the chocolate drink. It's nourishing. It's sustaining. It contains ground maize and is full of natural fats. It gives energy and wards off hunger. It is a food, he insists, jabbing a finger towards the offending cup. To drink this during Lent is a sin of gluttony, a failure of piety. His argument is based on the substance and effect of the drink. If it nourishes you, it breaks the fast. The other monk, perhaps a bit more of a pragmatist, or simply a bigger fan of the new beverage, takes a different approach. He argues based on technicality, quoting the ancient legal and theological principle, liquidum non frangit jejunio. A liquid does not break the fast. He holds that since chocolate is a beverage, something you drink, it cannot be classified as a food, which you eat. We drink wine during the fast. He might argue, we drink water. This is a liquid. It passes the lips and flows down the throat. It is not chewed. Therefore, it is permissible. This debate raged not just in monasteries, but all the way up to the highest echelons of the church. It became a serious theological headache. Priests wrote impassioned treatises on the subject. Scholars consulted ancient texts. Theologians on both sides of the argument accused the other of heresy or, perhaps worse, fuzzy thinking. The issue was so contentious because it struck at the heart of daily religious life for the wealthy and powerful, who had quickly grown accustomed to their morning cup of chocolate. Giving it up for 40 days was, for some, a true sacrifice. They funny, and very specific. Detail in this debate was the egg controversy. To make the chocolate drink even richer and frothier, some in Spain had begun whisking a raw egg yolk into the mixture. This, for the liquid does not break the fast camp, was a step too far. An egg was undeniably food, so a new set of arguments began. Did adding an egg transform the permissible liquid into a forbidden food? The mental gymnastics required to argue these points were truly incredible. The debate went on for decades, with no clear answer. Different bishops in different dioceses issued contradictory rulings. Finally, the question was escalated all the way to Rome. The story, which may be apocryphal but is too good not to tell, is that a group of Spanish clerics brought the issue to Pope Gregory XII in the late 16th century. To demonstrate the problem, they prepared a cup of chocolate for him. They made it the old-fashioned way, bitter, gritty, and without sugar. The Pope, accustomed to the fine wines and delicate foods of Italy, took a sip and, like the conquista first before him, grimaced in disgust. He supposedly declared that such a foul-tasting concoction could not possibly be a pleasure, and therefore couldn't be a violation of the fast. Whether that specific papal tasting ever happened is a matter of historical speculation. What is certain is that the official ruling eventually came down in favor of the liquid argument. In 1662, Cardinal Francesco Maria Brancaccia, after extensive consultation, issued a definitive judgment, liquidum non frangipanium. Chocolate, as a drink, was officially permissible during the fast. It was a major victory for chocolate lovers across Catholic Europe. The ruling essentially gave the green light for the devout to enjoy their stimulating, nourishing, and delicious chocolate drink even during the most solemn periods of religious observance. You watch the two monks, the pragmatist smiles, vindicated, the traditionalist scowls, defeated not by scripture, but by a legal principle and the powerful appetites of the nobility. This ruling was a crucial turning point. It removed the last major obstacle to chocolate's acceptance and integration into daily European life. It was now not just a fashionable drink, but a guilt-free one. It could be enjoyed year-round. This theological loophole had a profound impact on its spread. It made chocolate an ideal beverage for the clergy, who had to endure long, cold nights of prayer and study. They warm, stimulating cup of chocolate could sustain them without technically breaking their fasts. It solidified chocolate's place as a staple in the monasteries of Spain, France, and Italy, which became important centers for its production and refinement. The drink that began as a pagan ritual was now sanctioned by the highest authority of the Catholic Church. Its path to conquering the rest of Europe was now clear. The hushed, scholarly atmosphere of the Spanish monastery dissolves, and you find yourself swept up in a swirl of silk, perfume, and political intrigue. You are no longer in Spain. The year is 1615, and you are on the road to France, part of a magnificent and slow-moving royal procession. The air is filled with the clatter of horses' hooves, the rumble of carriage wheels, and the chatter of courtiers. This is not just a journey. It is a major geopolitical event. At the center of it all is a young woman, Anne of Austria. She is the daughter of the King of Spain, Philip II, and she is on her way to marry the young King of France, Louis VI. This marriage is meant to seal a fragile peace between the two great rival powers of Europe. She is a political pawn, a symbol of alliance, and her dowry consists of not just jewels and gold, but also a cultural treasure that the French have only heard whispers of, the secret to making Spanish chocolate. This is the mainstream historical account of how chocolate officially arrived in France. It crossed the Pyrenees not with merchants or monks, but as part of a royal trousseau. Diane, having grown up in the Spanish court, was accustomed to her daily cup of hot chocolate. It was a taste of home, a comforting ritual she was not prepared to give up. So, along with her ladies-in-waiting and her Spanish entourage, she brought with her a supply of cacao beans and, more importantly, her own dedicated servant, poor Melina, whose sole job was to prepare the drink to her liking. You get a glimpse inside her carriage. Amidst the velvet cushions and personal effects, there's a small, ornate chest. Inside are the precious cacao beans, and perhaps even her own personal grinding stone and pouring vessels. In a world where food was intensely local, bringing your own private food supply and the means to prepare, it was the ultimate statement of aristocratic power and cultural identity. The French court at the Louvre is a world of refined tastes, but their palate is still unfamiliar with this new flavor. When and first is her chocolate prepared, it is a source of immense curiosity. The French nobles, always on the lookout for the next trend, watch with fascination the aroma of the warm, spice, sweetened chocolate is intoxicating and utterly new. They are intrigued. However, its acceptance wasn't immediate. At first, it was seen as a strange, foreign habit of the new Spanish-born queen. It was her personal indulgence. But Anne was a queen, and the habits of queens quickly become the aspirations of the court. The ladies of her circle, eager to curry favor, would have been the first to try it. They discovered what the Spanish nobility already knew. This was a delicious, sophisticated, and pleasantly stimulating drink. Here we find a quirky little detail about its early adoption in France. Its reputation as an aphrodisiac. The stimulating effects of the theobromine, combined with the drink's rich, luxurious nature and its association with the royal bedchamber, quickly led to rumors about its power to incite passion. This reputation, which had already been hinted at in Spanish accounts of Montezuma's virility, took firm root in the libertine atmosphere of the French court. Doctors of the time wrote treatises analyzing its effects on the humors, with some claiming it heated the blood and was a powerful aid to lovers. This reputation, whether based in science or pure suggestion, did nothing to harm its popularity. But was Anne of Austria's marriage the only way chocolate entered France? This is a point of gentle academic debate. While the royal marriage is the most famous and well-documented entry point, some historians argue that chocolate was likely already trickling into France through other, less glamorous channels. The Basque region, which straddles the border between Spain and France, had deep cultural and trade connections. It's highly probable that Basque merchants and smugglers were already moving cacao beans across the border into towns like Bayonne well before 1615. Bayonne, in fact, would later become one of France's most important chocolate-making centers, so while the Queen gets the credit for making it fashionable, the groundwork may have already been laid by anonymous traders moving along clandestine routes. The influence of the court was undeniable, and his son, the great Sun King, Louis XIV, would grow up with the taste of chocolate. His own Spanish-born wife, Maria Teresa, was also an ardent chocolate lover, further cementing its place at the pinnacle of French society in the magnificent Palace of Versailles. To be offered a cup of chocolate at Versailles was to be accepted into the inner circle. It was served in exquisite, delicate porcelain cups, a far cry from the golden goblets of Montezuma or the simple clay mugs of the Aztec warriors. The recipe evolved, too. The French, with their sophisticated patissier traditions, began to experiment. They might have used a finer grade of sugar, or perfumed it with orange blossom water instead of just cinnamon. They perfected the art of making it smooth and velvety, a texture that would become a hallmark of French chocolate. You are now in a gilded salon at Versailles. A courtier, dressed in elaborate silks and a powdered wig, delicately sips from a porcelain cup. The drink is no longer just a Spanish secret. It is a French passion. It is a symbol of power, fashion, and even romance. The journey from a bitter Aztec battlefield ration to a treasured indulgence of the French aristocracy is a testament to the power of a little sugar, and the influence of a queen who refused to leave her favorite drink behind. The opulent, sun-drenched splendor of Versailles fades into a scene of mist, cobblestones, and the smell of coal smoke. You have crossed the English Channel. You are now in London. Sometime in the latter half of the 17th century, the city is a bustling, chaotic hub of global commerce, a world away from the rigid courtly etiquette of France. And here, chocolate is about to undergo another transformation. It's leaving the private salons of the aristocracy and going public. You find yourself standing on a muddy London street, dodging horse-drawn carriages and busy pedestrians. You follow a well-dressed gentleman, not into a palace, but into a new and exciting kind of establishment. A chocolate house, the sign above the door, perhaps something like the Cocoa Tree Chocolate House, is a beacon of modern, urban social life. You step inside. The air is thick with the rich, warm aroma of chocolate, mingled with the scent of tobaccos, smoke and the murmur of animated conversation. This is not a quiet, deferential space like a French salon. It's a vibrant, noisy, and exclusively male domain. Men from various walks of life, merchants, politicians, writers, and army officers, are gathered around small wooden tables, conducting business, gossiping, and debating the news of the day. This is the key historical development for chocolate in England. It became democratized, not in price, but in setting, while still an expensive luxury. It was now a beverage you could buy by the cup in a public place. These chocolate houses, along with the already popular coffee houses, became the epicenters of London's social, political, and economic life. They were the internet cafes of their day, places where information was exchanged, deals were struck, and public opinion was formed. The chocolate served here is different again. The English palate, at the time, had a fondness for hearty, robust flavors. The chocolate drink is often prepared with milk, making it richer and creamier than the French or Spanish versions. Sometimes, it is fortified with a splash of sherry or spiced with nutmeg. It's served in sturdy ceramic mugs, meant for sipping over a long period of debate or a game of cards. You watch a Whig politician in one corner, deep in a hushed conversation about a parliamentary plot, his arguments fueled by the stimulating brew. In another corner, merchants discuss shipping routes and insurance rates for voyages to the Indies. The chocolate house was a place for networking and business. In fact, some of London's most famous institutions were born in these establishments. The great insurance market, Lloyd's of London, for example, began in a coffee house. Similarly, chocolate houses were often associated with specific political factions. White's, one of the most famous, was a notorious gambling den and a hub for the Tory party. Here we encounter a curious and little-known fact about these places: their reputation. While coffee houses were seen as places of sober intellectual debate, the penny universities, chocolate houses were often considered more aristocratic, decadent, and even a bit louche. The drink itself was seen as richer, more indulgent, and less conducive to rigorous intellectual work than the bitter jolt of coffee. A satirical pamphlet from the era might mock a fop or a dandy for spending his afternoon sipping chocolate and gossiping, while serious men of commerce drank coffee. There was a subtle class and character distinction between the two beverages. But how did the English get their hands on the beans in the first place, breaking the Spanish monopoly? This is a point where history gets a little murky and violent. Initially, it was through piracy. English privateers, like the famous Sir Francis Drake, would raid Spanish galleons returning from the New World. While they were primarily after gold and silver, they would also seize the strange almonds in the cargo hold. As mentioned before, they often didn't know what to do with them at first. However, as knowledge of Spain's chocolate secret began to leak out, the beans became a valuable prize in their own right. A more significant turning point came in 1655 when England captured the island of Jamaica from the Spanish. This was a game changer. Jamaica was a major cacao growing region. For the first time, the English had their own, direct and reliable supply of beans. They didn't need to rely on smuggling or piracy anymore. They could establish their own plantations, often using the same brutal systems of enslaved labor that the Spanish had. This direct supply chain caused the price of cacao in London to drop. Not enough to make it a drink for the masses, but enough to support the burgeoning chocolate house culture. So who first opened these houses? The history is a bit hazy, a topic of ongoing research for food historians. The first advertisements for chocolate as a drink appeared in London newspapers in the 1652s, touting its excellent West India drink. A Frenchman is often credited with opening the first chocolate house in London in 1657, but the records are sparse. What is clear is that by the 1692s, they were a well-established feature of the London landscape. You take a deep breath, inhaling the unique atmosphere. The drink that was once a sacred Aztec ritual, then a secret of the Spanish court, and a passion of French aristocrats, has now become a social lubricant in a smoky London business hub. It's a fuel for politics, commerce, and gossip. Its journey has taken it from the divine to the democratic, from the palace to the public house. It has been adapted and reinterpreted by each culture it has touched, but its core identity as a source of energy and a symbol of status remains, and its journey is far from over. The noisy, smoke-filled air of the London chocolate house clears, and you find yourself in a much quieter, more scholarly setting. You're in a doctor's study, sometime in the late 17th or early 18th century. The room is lined with leather-bound books, Anatomical charts hang on the walls, and a human skull sits on the desk, a classic memento mori. The air smells of old paper, medicinal herbs, and, faintly, of chocolate. The doctor, a man with a serious expression and spectacles perched on his nose, is carefully consulting a thick medical tome. He is not researching a disease. He is researching an ingredient. In this era, the line between food and medicine was incredibly blurry. Everything you consumed was believed to affect the four bodily humors: blood, phlegm, yellow bile, and black bile, which needed to be in perfect balance for good health. And a potent, exotic substance like chocolate was of immense interest to the medical community. This is a crucial, often forgotten, chapter in chocolate's history. Its life as a medicine. Before it was a candy, it was a cure-all. When chocolate was first introduced to Europe, it wasn't just marketed as a pleasurable beverage, but as a powerful health tonic. The earliest advertisements and pamphlets about chocolate were filled with extraordinary medical claims. The doctor turns a page in his book. You glance over his shoulder and see a list of ailments that chocolate was purported to cure. The list is astonishingly long and varied. It was prescribed to aid digestion, to cure consumption, tuberculosis, to soothe agitated nerves, to relieve coughs, and to increase fertility. It was recommended for the thin, to help them gain weight, and for the overweight, to help them suppress their appetite. It was a treatment for hemorrhoids and a cure for hypochondria. Essentially, whatever ailed you, a doctor somewhere in Europe was willing to prescribe a cup of chocolate. Why was it seen as such a panacea? Part of it was its exotic origin. In the medical thinking of the time, rare and expensive substances from faraway lands were often believed to hold powerful medicinal properties, but it was also due to the humoral theory. Chocolate, being warm and moist by some classifications, or cool and dry by others, the doctors couldn't agree, could be used to balance out any corresponding humoral imbalance in a patient. Its effects were also undeniable. It gave energy and improved mood. These palpable effects were interpreted as proof of its medical efficacy. You watch as the doctor prepares a medicinal dose. It's not the sweet, milky concoction of a London chocolate house to be considered serious medicine. It often had to be less pleasant. The recipe might involve less sugar and the addition of other healthy ingredients. For a weak stomach, he might mix it with cinnamon and anise. For fever, he might prepare it with citrus peel. This leads to a weird and wonderful side alley of chocolate history. The bizarre recipes. To enhance its medical properties, doctors and apothecaries mix chocolate with all sorts of strange things. One French physician, for example, recommended a chocolate drink mixed with ambergris, a waxy substance from the digestive system of sperm whales, as a potent remedy for nervous afflictions. Others mixed it with ground-up crab claws or licorice. The goal was to create a powerful compound, and the rich, strong flavor of chocolate was an excellent vehicle for masking other, less palatable, medicinal ingredients. It was the 17th century version of hiding a pill in a spoonful of pudding. But were these doctors just making it all up? This is where the historical debate gets interesting. From a modern scientific perspective, most of their claims were baseless, rooted in a flawed understanding of human physiology. However, they weren't entirely wrong. We now know that cacao is packed with beneficial compounds. It contains flavonoids, which are powerful antioxidants. It has theobromine, a mild stimulant and vasodilator that can lower blood pressure. It contains minerals like iron and magnesium. So when an 18th century doctor prescribed chocolate for lethargy or a weak heart, he may have been accidentally prescribing a legitimate dose of stimulants and vasodilatants. He was right for the wrong reasons. The debate among historians is not whether chocolate had medicinal properties, but to what extent the early modern doctors understood and successfully applied them, versus simply throwing an expensive cure-all at every problem. The doctor in his study closes his book. An assistant brings in a tray. On it is a single cup of steaming, dark chocolate, prepared to a specific medicinal prescription. It is for a wealthy patient suffering from melancholy, what we might now call depression. The doctor's prescription is based on the idea that chocolate cheers the spirit and soothes the soul. He is, in his own way, prescribing an antidepressant, the mood-lifting properties of chocolate, combining the gentle stimulation of theobromine with the pleasure of sugar and fat, were one of its most consistently reported cures. This medical reputation was crucial for chocolate's status. It wasn't just a frivolous indulgence. It was good for you. This allowed people to enjoy it without guilt, under doctor's orders. It cemented its place in the households of the wealthy as a daily staple, a morning tonic that was both a pleasure and a preventative. The boundary between a treat and a treatment had been completely erased. But this identity as a purely liquid medicine was about to be shattered by a technological breakthrough that would change its very form. The dusty, herb-scented doctor's study fades away, and you find yourself in a place of noise, steam, and mechanical ingenuity. You are in the Netherlands. Sometime in the early 19th century, the Industrial Revolution is in full swing, and its spirit of innovation is about to tackle the ancient problem of the cacao bean. For centuries, the process of making chocolate has been brutally laborious, relying on the back-breaking work of grinding by hand on a meat. This has kept chocolate a thick, often gritty, an exclusively liquid affair. You are in the workshop of a man named Cohen Rod Johannes van Houten. He is not a chef, a nobleman, or a doctor. He is a chemist and an inventor, and he is frustrated by the nature of chocolate. He sees the thick, oily paste produced by grinding cacao nibs and identifies the core issue. The fat. Cacao nibs are roughly 54% fat, a substance we now call cocoa butter. This high-fat content is what makes the ground nibs a paste rather than a powder, and it's what gives the traditional chocolate drink its sometimes heavy, oily, and hard-to-digest quality. Van Houten has an idea. What if he could separate the fat from the rest of the bean? This is the central problem he sets out to solve. You watch as he tinkers with his invention, a device that looks like a giant, powerful screw press. This is the cacao press, and its invention in 1828 is arguably the single most important technological leap in the history of chocolate. He takes a batch of roasted, ground cacao nibs, the familiar coarse paste known as cacao liquor, and places it inside a heavy-duty cylinder. He then turns a massive screw, applying immense hydraulic pressure to the paste. Slowly, miraculously, a golden, liquid fat begins to drip out from the press. This is pure, liquid cocoa butter. It is being squeezed out of the solid components of the bean. What's left inside the press is a hard, dry cake of compressed cacao solids. Van Houten takes this cake and grinds it into a fine, dark, and easily dissolvable powder. This is the first ever cocoa powder. It has a deep, intense chocolate flavor, but with most of the fat removed. It is no longer oily or heavy. When mixed with hot water or milk, it creates a light, smooth, and consistent beverage, a vast improvement on the often lumpy traditional hot chocolate. This invention, the creation of Dutch processed cocoa, was a revolution in itself. But Van Houten didn't stop there. He made another crucial discovery. Cacao is naturally quite acidic. He found that if he treated the cocoa powder with alkaline salts, like potassium carbonate, it would neutralize the acidity. This process, which became known as Dutching, had several benefits. It made the powder even easier to dissolve in liquid. It darkened the color, creating a richer, more appealing reddish-brown hue. And it softened the flavor, mellowing the harshest bitter notes into a milder, smoother taste that more people found palatable. This Dutch processed cocoa powder is the direct ancestor of the cocoa powder you buy in the supermarket today. This two-part invention, the press and the alkalizing process, completely changed the game. But here's a little-known, quirky outcome of this innovation. It created a waste product. For the first time, chocolate makers had a surplus of this golden liquid fat, cocoa butter. What were they supposed to do with it? At first, it was likely sold off for use in cosmetics or ointments, as it was a wonderful moisturizer. It was a byproduct, a secondary good. No one yet realized that this waste held the key to an even bigger revolution. The historical debate here isn't about whether Van Houten invented the press. That is well documented. The debate is about the true nature of his Dutching process. Van Houten and his family kept the exact method a closely guarded secret for over a decade, giving them a huge commercial advantage. Other chocolate makers struggled to replicate it. Was it a simple alkaline treatment, as is commonly believed, or was there another, more complex chemical step involved that has been lost to history? Some food historians pore over the scant records from the time, trying to reverse engineer his secret from the cryptic descriptions. The mystique he built around his process was a masterful piece of industrial age marketing. You stand in Van Houten's workshop, the air smelling of powdered cocoa and hot metal. You see the two products of his genius sitting side by side. On one side, a pile of fine, dark, defatted cocoa powder, ready to make a smoother, more refined drink. On the other side, a container of warm, liquid cocoa butter, a fragrant but seemingly purposeless byproduct. Van Houten has fundamentally deconstructed the cacao bean. For thousands of years, it had been treated as a single, indivisible entity. He has broken it down into its constituent parts, the flavor solids in the fat. He has solved the problem of making a better chocolate drink, but in doing so, he has unintentionally created the raw materials for something entirely new. He has laid the foundation for someone else to come along. Look at the cocoa powder and the waste cocoa butter, and think, what happens if I put these back together, but in a different ratio, and add a lot of sugar? The age of drinking chocolate was about to give way to the age of eating it. The steam and clanking machinery of Van Houten's Dutch workshop give way to the organized hum of a British factory. You are in Bristol, England, in the year 1847. The world is getting faster, more industrial, and people's tastes are changing. You are inside the factory of a Quaker family firm, J. S. Fry & Sons. The Fry family were prominent chocolate makers, having produced chocolate drinks for over a century. But Joseph Fry, the man now in charge, is about to make history. He stands in his factory, surrounded by the familiar sights and smells of chocolate production. He has the two revolutionary ingredients created by Van Houten's press, the fine, defatted cocoa powder and the surplus of pure cocoa butter. For years, cocoateurs had been trying to create a solid form of chocolate that was pleasant to eat. They had tried mixing sugar and cacao liquor and pressing it into molds, but the results were often coarse, grainy, and not particularly appealing. It was more of a chewing chocolate than a melting one. Joseph Fry has a brilliant, simple idea. It's the kind of idea that seems obvious in retrospect, but was groundbreaking at the time. He realizes that the problem with the old chewing chocolate was the texture. His solution: use the cocoa powder for flavor, add plenty of sugar for sweetness, and then, this is the crucial step, melt down the waste cocoa butter and add it back into the mixture. This is the mainstream historical moment, the creation of the first modern chocolate bar. You watch as the process unfolds. A worker mixes a precise ratio of first cocoa powder with sugar. Then, another worker pours in a stream of warm, liquid cocoa butter. The extra fat acts as a lubricant, coating every tiny particle of sugar and cocoa, creating a smooth, fluid paste. This paste is then poured into rectangular molds. There is no milk in this mixture. This is a dark, relatively bitter-tasting chocolate by modern standards. The molds are left to cool. As the cocoa butter solidifies at room temperature, it contracts slightly, allowing the finished product to be easily removed from the mold. A worker taps one of the molds on a table, and out pops a solid, glossy, dark brown bar of chocolate. It snaps cleanly when broken. It is firm to the touch, but when a piece is placed in the mouth, the warmth of the tongue is just enough to melt the cocoa butter, releasing the rich flavors of the cocoa and sugar in a smooth, velvety flood. Fry called it chocolate delicacy ex manger, delicious chocolate to eat. It was a sensation. For the first time, chocolate was not a drink you sipped, but a confection you could carry in your pocket. It was portable, convenient, and utterly novel. The firm began marketing these bars to the British public, and they were an immediate success. The era of eating chocolate had begun. This innovation leads to a rather charming, if slightly unappetizing, bit of trivia. The chocolate worm panic. In the early days of solid chocolate, quality control was not what it is today. The beans could be infested with the larvae of moths, which were then roasted and ground right along with the cacao. This wasn't a problem in a hot drink, but in a solid bar. It was sometimes possible to find a tiny, harmless but very off-putting, cooked worm. This led to a minor public panic and a slew of satirical cartoons and magazines like Punch, depicting people finding unexpected protein in their chocolate bars. It pushed manufacturers like Fry and their competitors to drastically improve their hygiene and inspection standards. But was Fry truly the first? Herein lies the historical debate. The Fry Company's 1847 bar is widely credited as the first mass-produced, molded chocolate bar for eating. However, the line between chewing chocolate and a true eating chocolate is blurry. Other co-creators across Europe, like the French company Menia, were also experimenting with solid chocolate formulations around the same time. There are claims of earlier, small-batch solid chocolates being produced in places like Italy and France. The debate centers on the definition. Does first mean the first person to ever create a solid piece of chocolate, or the first to develop a commercially viable, palatable, and widely distributed bar? Most historians award the latter, more significant, title to Friss, as their product was the one that truly launched the industry. You stand in the Fry factory, the air sweet with the smell of sugar and processed cocoa. The workers are wrapping the finished bars in paper, getting them ready for shipment. This is a moment of profound transformation. The cacao bean's long journey has taken another sharp turn. For millennia, it was a liquid. Its identity was tied to a cup, a gourd, a frothy beverage. Joseph Fry, by cleverly recombining the elements that Van Houten had separated, has given it a new body, a new form. This solid bar of chocolate is a product of its time. It is a product of the Industrial Revolution, born from steam-powered presses and factory production lines. It is a convenience food for a world that is speeding up. It still carries the DNA of its Aztec ancestor, the bitterness, the richness, the energy, but it has been completely reimagined. It's no longer a sacred drink for priests or a stimulant for warriors. It's not a secret of the Spanish court or a social lubricant for London politicians. It is becoming a treat, a simple, affordable pleasure. But there is one final, crucial ingredient yet to be added. An ingredient that will soften its character and propel it to global domination. The industrial clatter of the Bristol factory softens, and you are transported to a landscape of breathtaking beauty. You are surrounded by serene lakes, lush, green valleys, and snow-capped alpine peaks. You are in Switzerland in the 1872. This small, landlocked country, with no cacao-growing colonies of its own, seems an unlikely place to become the world capital of chocolate. But it is here that the final, most luxurious reinvention of chocolate will take place. You find yourself in the small town of Vevey, in the workshop of a man named Daniel Peter. He is a candle maker turned calculator, and he is struggling with a problem. He lives next door to a very successful neighbor, a German-born chemist named Henry Nessel, who has recently invented a revolutionary new product, powdered infant formula, made by dehydrating milk. Peter sees the dark, somewhat bitter chocolate bars being produced by the English and has an idea. What if he could combine the richness of chocolate with the creamy, gentle flavor of milk? This seems like a simple idea, but it is a formidable technical challenge. This is the central story of milk chocolate's invention. Peter's first attempts are a disaster. He tries mixing fresh milk with his chocolate paste, but milk is mostly water. Adding water to melting chocolate causes it to seize. It becomes a clumpy, grainy, unusable mess. The excess water also makes the finished product prone to mildew and spoilage. He has a great idea, but a fundamental chemistry problem he can't solve. He struggles with this for years. His business is on the brink of failure. Then, he turns to his neighbor. He sees the success of Nessel's infant formula and realizes the solution has been next door all along. The key is not to add liquid milk, but to remove the water first. Using Nestle's process for making powdered milk, Peter is able to create a condensed or powdered milk product that he can then blend with his cacao liquor and sugar paste. You are in his workshop for the breakthrough moment in 1875. You can feel the tension in years of frustration. He carefully mixes the cacao liquor, sugar, cocoa butter, dindale, the crucial ingredient, the condensed milk powder. He grinds and mixes the paste for hours. The result is a revelation. It is a new kind of chocolate. It is sweeter, less bitter, and has a distinctively creamy, caramel-like flavor from the cooked milk solids. Most importantly, it has a luxuriably smooth, velvety texture that melts on the tongue in a way no dark chocolate ever could. He has created milk chocolate, but the story of its texture doesn't end there. The scene shifts a few years forward, to the factory of another Swiss chocolatier, Rodolphe Lindt, in Bern. Lindt is also trying to make a better, smoother chocolate, the chocolate of the time. Even Peter's milk chocolate could still have a slightly sandy or gritty texture on the tongue. Lindt is searching for a way to make it perfectly smooth, to make it truly melt in the mouth. Here we come to one of the most famous and charming, though possibly embellished, legends in chocolate history. The story goes that one Friday evening in 1879, Lindt left his factory for the weekend, forgetting to turn off his mixing machine. The machine, a long, trough-like vessel with rollers inside, continued to churn the chocolate paste over and over again, all through Friday night, all day Saturday, and all through Sunday. When Lindt returned to the factory on Monday morning, he was horrified, expecting to find a hardened, ruined mass of chocolate. Instead, he found a warm, liquid, fragrant paste unlike anything he had ever seen. He tasted it. It was a miracle. The days of continuous, gentle agitation had ground the sugar and cocoa particles down to a microscopic size, smaller than the tongue can detect. The prolonged duration had also driven off some of the remaining acidic notes. The result was a chocolate with an impossibly silky, melting texture. He had accidentally invented the conching process. Did Lindt really discover conching by accident over a single weekend? This is a point of delightful historical debate. Many historians believe the story is a clever bit of marketing mythology, and that the discovery was more likely the result of deliberate, painstaking experimentation. The happy accident narrative is just a better story, regardless of how it was discovered. Conching was the final piece of the puzzle. This long, slow heating and agitating process is what gives high-quality chocolate its signature ultra-smooth, melt-in-your-mouth quality. Daniel Peter's addition of milk created the flavor of modern chocolate. Rodolphe Lindt's invention of conching created its texture. The Swiss had not just entered the chocolate game. They had redefined it. They transformed it from a relatively simple confection into a sophisticated, luxurious sensory experience. You are now in a pristine Swiss chocolate shop. The air is clean and sweet. In a glass case are perfectly molded bars and intricately shaped pralines. A shopkeeper offers you a small piece of the new milk chocolate. It is a world away from the bitter, spicy drink of the Aztecs. It is a world away from the gritty, dark bar of the English factories. This is a product of pure pleasure. It is gentle, creamy, and comforting. It is the final taming of the cacao bean. The food of the gods has been transformed into a food for pure, earthly indulgence, a perfect bedtime treat, or so it would seem. The pristine, quiet luxury of the Swiss are reft absgusten. Word stream. Com WS tests M- report minus guard calculator shop begins to fade, replaced by the relentless, rhythmic clamor of mass production. You are back in England, and that America, at the turn of the 20th century. The world is changing at a dizzying pace. The era of the artisan is giving way to the age of the industrialist. And chocolate, once a luxury for kings and aristocrats, is about to make its final leap into the hands of the common person. You are standing on a bustling city street. A brightly colored poster on a wall catches your eye. It's an advertisement for a chocolate bar. A smiling child is eating it. The price is listed at the bottom, just a few pennies. This is the culmination of the industrial processes you've witnessed. Van Houten's Bruce, Frisboy, and the Swiss techniques for making milk chocolate have all been adopted, scaled up, and streamlined by ambitious entrepreneurs. The key to this democratization was efficiency and scale. Men like George Cadbury in England and Milton Hershey in America built massive factories, some of the largest in the world. These weren't just workplaces, they were entire ecosystems of production. You see ships and trains arriving, delivering mountains of raw materials, cacao beans from the Gold Coast of Africa, Ghana, sugar from the Caribbean, and milk from thousands of local dairy farms. Inside the factories, enormous machines, powered by steam and electricity, roast, grind, mix, and conky chocolate on a scale that would have been unimaginable just a generation earlier. This is the mainstream historical narrative of this period. Industrialization made chocolate affordable. The high cost of chocolate had always been due to the expensive raw materials and the labor-intensive production process. By buying raw materials in huge quantities and automating every step of the production, these industrialists could drastically cut the cost of a single chocolate bar. You follow a factory worker on her way home. She stops at a small corner shop and buys a chocolate bar for her son. This simple act would have been an impossible luxury for her parents. For her, it's an affordable, everyday treat. Chocolate is no longer a status symbol consumed in a palace or a chocolate house. It's a small moment of pleasure, a burst of energy for the working class, a reward for a child. It has become a food of the people. The branding changes, too. The names are no longer just chocolate to eat. They are catchy, memorable brand names. Cadbury's Dairy Milk, Hershey's Milk Chocolate. The packaging becomes bright and appealing. Advertising plays a huge role in positioning chocolate as a wholesome, family-friendly food. It's marketed as being full of energy, a perfect snack for growing children. The stimulating properties of theobromine, once the secret of Aztec warriors, are now rebranded as nourishing energy for the masses. But this affordability came at a price, which leads to a little-known and rather waxy secret of early mass-market chocolate. To cut costs even further, some less scrupulous manufacturers in the early 20th century would use less cocoa butter, which was a valuable commodity, and substitute it with cheaper fats, like paraffin wax. This would give the bar a decent appearance and snap, but the texture would be waxy and it wouldn't melt in the mouth properly. This led to the development of early food purity laws and a push by the premium brands like Cadbury and Hershey to advertise the purity of their ingredients, made with 100% real cocoa butter, as a mark of quality. Was this democratization of chocolate a purely positive development? This is a point of quiet historical and social debate. On one hand, it brought a simple, affordable pleasure to millions of people. It created jobs and built entire communities around the factories. It transformed a luxury good into an everyday staple, a small victory for the consumer. On the other hand, this doctor for lower prices put immense pressure on the supply chain. The demand for cheap cacao beans fueled the expansion of plantations in colonial territories, often under brutal and exploitative labor conditions that were not far removed from the systems set up by Cortés. The low price in a London shop was often paid for by the low wages and harsh life of a cacao farmer in West Africa. This complex legacy, the tension between chocolate as an affordable pleasure and the human cost of its production, is a theme that runs through its entire modern history. You stand back and watch the flow of modern city life. You see a construction worker on his lunch break, unwrapping a chocolate bar. You see a secretary enjoying a small piece with her afternoon tea. You see children pulling their pennies to buy one to share. The journey is almost complete. The bitter brew of Montezuma has been utterly transformed. It has been sweetened, milked, conjured, and industrialized. It has been made smooth, safe, and, most importantly, it has conquered the world not through its power as a sacred stimulant, but through its appeal as a comforting, accessible, and universally loved sweet. The final step in its journey was not one of flavor, but of economics. The bustling, anonymous city street gives way to a scene of surprising order and tranquility. You are in Bournville, a village on the outskirts of Birmingham, England, in the early 1900s. The air is clean. The houses are well kept with tidy gardens, and there are parks and green spaces everywhere. This is not a typical industrial town. This is a purpose-built utopia, and its existence is entirely funded by chocolate. You are at the home of the Cadbury family, too, along with other Quaker industrialists like the Frisch and the Rowntree dominated the British confectionery industry. As devout Quakers, they were not typical capitalists. They were religious philanthropists who believed they had a moral and social responsibility to their workers. They were appalled by the squalid, overcrowded, and unsanitary living conditions of the urban working class in Victorian England, and they decided to use the profits from their chocolate empire to do something about it. This is the central, remarkable story of the Quaker calculators, their social vision. George Cadbury and his brother Richard moved their factory out of the cramped city center of Birmingham in 1879 to a new, greenfield site they named Bournville. And here, they didn't just build a factory. They built a town. You walk through its streets. The houses, designed in an arts and crafts style, are spacious, with indoor plumbing and large gardens so that every family could grow their own vegetables. The rent was low. The town had schools, hospitals, libraries, and public swimming pools. It was, in essence, a garden city, a model community designed to promote the health, well-being, and moral character of the factory workers. It was a radical experiment in social engineering. The Cadburys believed that a healthy, happy, well-housed workforce would also be a more productive and loyal one. There were strict rules in Bournville. Alcohol was banned, and there were mandatory morning prayers in the factory. But for the workers who lived there, it was a world away from the slums they had left behind. And here we find a little-known detail that highlights the depth of their paternalistic vision. The company dental plan. The Cadburys were early pioneers of employee healthcare. Given that their product was a sugary sweet, they were acutely aware of the risk of tooth decay. So, they established a full-service dental clinic for their workers and their families, offering subsidized care. They even made it a condition of employment that workers attend regular dental checkups. It's a slightly amusing but telling detail. The company that might be giving you cavities was also determined to fix them. But was this Quaker capitalism a pure, selfless utopia? This is a topic of ongoing historical debate among social and business historians. On one hand, there is no denying the immense positive impact these industrialists had on the lives of their workers. They were sincere in their Christian faith and their desire to create a better world. Bournville, and the similar model village built by the Rowntree Senior, were genuinely revolutionary in their approach to urban planning and employee welfare, influencing the Garden City movement across the world. On the other hand, some critics argue that it was a form of paternalistic control. The workers were well cared for, but they were also constantly monitored. The company's values were imposed on their private lives. The idyllic village created a compliant, dependent workforce, less likely to unionize or cause trouble. Was it true philanthropy, or was it just a very clever, long-term business strategy to ensure a stable labor force? The answer, most historians agree, is likely a complex mix of both. The Cadburys were genuinely good men who also understood that what was good for their workers' souls was also good for their bottom line. You stand on a hill overlooking the Bournville factory, with its factory in a garden slogan. You can smell the sweet scent of chocolate production on the breeze. It's a smell that, in this context, represents not just a confection, but a social ideal. The profits from those millions of bars of dairy milk are funding the houses, the parks, the very fabric of this community. The journey of chocolate has been a story of taste, technology, and economics. But here in Bournville, it becomes a story of ideology. The bitter bean from a distant jungle has been transformed into a tool for social reform. It is building a new kind of society, one that attempts to balance the harsh realities of industrial capitalism with a vision of moral responsibility. The food of the Aztec gods is now the fuel for a Quaker utopia. It's a strange and unexpected turn in a journey full of them. A testament to the way a simple foodstuff can become entangled with the grandest ideas of its time. The peaceful, manicured lawns of Bourneville dissolve into a landscape of mud, barbed wire, and despair. You are in a trench on the Western Front during World War I. The air is cold and damp, filled with the constant, distant rumble of artillery and the metallic smell of fear. The utopian ideals of the Quaker industrialists feel a million miles away. Yet, even here, in the midst of the 20th century's first great catastrophe, chocolate has a crucial role to play. You are huddled in the trench alongside a young soldier. He is cold, exhausted, and homesick. An officer moves down the line, handing out rations, along with the hardtack biscuits and canned bully beef. The soldier is given something small, dense, and wrapped in paper. A bar of chocolate. This isn't a luxury. It's a vital piece of military equipment. This is the next major chapter in chocolate's history. Its life as a military ration. From the battlefields of World War I to the deserts of Iraq, chocolate has been a staple in the soldier's kit. Its properties make it a near-perfect military food. It's incredibly calorie-dense, providing a huge amount of energy in a small, lightweight package. It's relatively stable and can endure a wide range of temperatures without spoiling. And, crucially, it provides a psychological boost, a small taste of home and comfort in the most brutal of environments. The soldier in the trench enwraps his bar. It's a simple, dark, and not overly sweet chocolate. He breaks off a piece and eats it slowly, savoring it. For a moment, the taste transports him away from the mud and the fear. The quick hit of sugar and the sustained energy from the theobromine give him a small, but vital, physical and mental lift. It's a morale booster and a fuel source rolled into one. Armies on all sides of the conflict recognized this. British soldiers were often given Cadbury or Frisbos in their ration packs, while German soldiers had brands like Stolwe or CK. The story of military chocolate gets even more specific and interesting during World War II, with the development of the famous American ration D-bar. This leads us to a fascinating and slightly disgusting piece of food science trivia. The U.S. Army Quartermaster Corps approached the Hershey Company in 1937 with a very specific set of requirements for an emergency ration bar. It had to weigh 4 ounces, be high in energy, and be able to withstand high temperatures. But they had one more, very strange request. It had to taste a little better than a boiled potato. Why the bizarre flavor requirement? The Army was worried that if the emergency chocolate bar was too delicious, soldiers would be tempted to eat it as a snack instead of saving it for a true emergency. So, Hershey's chief chemist, Samuel Hinkle, was tasked with the strange job of intentionally making a mediocre-tasting chocolate bar. He used a formula of chocolate liquor, sugar, skim milk powder, and oat flour, which made it extremely dense and hard to bite. The resulting Logan bar, named after the quartermaster officer who commissioned it, was so hard that soldiers nicknamed it Hitler's secret weapon, joking that you could break your teeth on it. It fit the Army's requirements perfectly, a high-energy, heat-resistant bar that no one would eat for pleasure. But was this intentional degradation of flavor the only way to make military chocolate? This is a point of historical and logistical debate. A focus on durability and energy content often came at the expense of taste. However, other forms of chocolate were also distributed. The tropical bar was another Hershey product designed to resist melting even more than the D-ration, while the addition of chocolate discs to the famous K rations provided a more palatable treat. The debate is about balance. Was the extreme focus on durability in the D-ration a necessary evil for a true emergency ration? Or was it a sign of military logistics overthinking the problem at the expense of the soldiers' morale, which a tastier bar might have boosted even more? You are now transported to a different scene. A street in a newly liberated town in France in 1944. An American GI is surrounded by a group of jubilant but hungry children. He reaches into his pocket and pulls out a Hershey bar. Not the dreadful D-ration, but a standard issue. Sweeter bar. He breaks it into pieces and hands them out. The children's faces light up. In this moment, the chocolate bar is not a ration nor a source of energy. It is a symbol of liberation, of American generosity, of hope. It becomes an instrument of soft power, a tool of diplomacy wielded one small piece at a time. The journey of the cacao bean has been long and strange. It fueled Aztec warriors preparing for ritual combat. Now, centuries later, its descendant is fueling modern soldiers in the trenches of industrial warfare. It has been a constant companion in conflict, valued not for its sacred properties, but for its calories and its ability to provide a moment of comfort in the midst of chaos. The food of the gods has become the soldier's friend, a small, sweet reminder of the world they are fighting for. The grim, war-torn landscapes of Europe dissolve, replaced by the soft, glamorous glow of a darkened movie theater. The war is over. It's the 1950s, a time of booming prosperity, suburban growth, and the golden age of Hollywood. The world is looking for comfort, for romance, for simple pleasures. And chocolate is about to be cast in its most iconic role yet. You are sitting in a plush velvet seat, the flickering light of the silver screen reflected in your eyes. On screen, a handsome leading man is trying to win the heart of a beautiful starlet. He arrives at her door, not with a grand bouquet of flowers, but with a small, elegantly wrapped box tied with a ribbon. He opens it, and inside is a perfectly arranged assortment of chocolates. This scene, in countless variations, will become a cornerstone of cinematic language. This is the next great transformation of chocolate, its evolution into the ultimate symbol of romance, love, and special occasion gifting. While it had been a gift item before, Hollywood cemented this identity in the global popular imagination. A box of chocolates became shorthand for courtship, for apology, for affection. It was a simple, accessible gesture that carried a weight of romantic meaning. Why did chocolate fit this role so perfectly? It was a combination of factors. It was still seen as a luxury, but an affordable one. It was a sensual pleasure, the rich taste, the smooth texture, the sweet aroma, and it still carried that faint, lingering reputation from the French court as a mild aphrodisiac. It was the perfect prop for a love story. This romantic association was amplified by brilliant marketing. Cochleates like Cadbury and Whitman seized on this idea. The Whitman sampler, with its distinctive cross-stitch pattern box and its famous slogan, "A woman never forgets the man who remembers," is a prime example. The box even included a little map, a key to the different chocolates inside, adding an element of discovery and personalization to the gift. Giving a Whitman sampler wasn't just giving candy, it was participating in a well-established romantic ritual. This brings us to a fascinating, little-known piece of marketing history. The heart-shaped box. Why do we associate love, and specifically Valentine's Day, with a heart-shaped box of chocolates? The credit for this stroke of genius goes to Richard Cadbury, son of the company's founder. In the 1860s, the Cadbury Company had perfected a way to create beautiful, sturdy boxes for their chocolates. Richard, a savvy marketer, created the first heart-shaped fancy box for Valentine's Day in 1861. He decorated the lids with sentimental images of flowers and cupids. The idea was that once the chocolates were eaten, the beautiful box itself could be kept as a memento, a place to store love letters or other keepsakes. It was an instant, massive success, and the tradition he started continues to this day. But was chocolates on screen image always so wholesome and romantic? Here's where a small cultural debate can be found. While the dominant image was one of sweet, innocent love, chocolate also had a more complex, sometimes darker, role in film. Think of the classic film noir. The femme fatale might be seen slowly, luxuriously eating a single, expensive chocolate, the act symbolizing her decadence, her self-indulgence, and her dangerous allure. In these films, chocolate wasn't about innocent love, but about forbidden pleasure and temptation. Alfred Hitchcock famously used a poisoned box of chocolates as a plot device. So, while Hollywood overwhelmingly cast chocolate as the hero of romance, it occasionally allowed it to play the villain, too, tapping into its deeper associations with indulgence and desire. You leave the movie theater and walk out into the bright sunshine of a post-war American city. You pass a candy store, its window filled with heart-shaped boxes and elaborate displays. You see a young couple on a date, sharing a chocolate milkshake at a soda fountain. The movies haven't just reflected culture, they have shaped it. They have taught generations of people that chocolate is the proper way to say I love you. The journey of the cacao bean has taken it to yet another unexpected destination. It is no longer a food for the body, like for the Aztec warrior, or the mind, like for the London politician. It is now a food for the heart, the bitter, stimulating drink of the gods, once used in sacred rituals and battlefield preparations, has been completely transformed. Its most powerful property is no longer theobrahman, but symbolism. It has become the official language of love, a sweet, melting metaphor for affection, packaged neatly in a cardboard box and sold to us on the silver screen. The soft, romantic glow of the Hollywood era dims, and you find yourself in a brightly lit, modern supermarket aisle. The year is sometime in the 1980 seconds or 90 seconds. The mood has shifted. The optimism and indulgence of the post-war decades have given way to a new kind of anxiety. You are in the midst of the low-fat, health-conscious revolution, and a new villain has been identified. Its picture is on every magazine cover. Its name whispered in every gym. Calories. You watch a shopper push her cart down the candy aisle. She pauses in front of the chocolate bars, a universe of colorful wrappers promising sweet delight. She picks one up, but her eyes go straight to the back, to the newly mandated nutritional information panel. She sees the numbers for fat, sugar, and calories. Her expression is one of conflict, of guilt. She puts the bar back on the shelf and reaches instead for a box of rice cakes. This is the next dramatic turn in our story. Chocolates fall from grace, the very things that made it so beloved. Its richness, its sweetness, its comforting blend of fat and sugar are now its greatest liabilities. The food that was once marketed as a nourishing and healthy energy source for children is now being labeled as junk food. It's the enemy of the eater, the cause of weight gain, a forbidden pleasure to be avoided. This is the primary historical narrative of this period, a massive cultural shift, driven by public health campaigns and a new focus on fitness. We cast chocolate. It went from being a wholesome treat to a guilty indulgence. Doctors, who once prescribed it for melancholy, now warned their patients to limit it to prevent obesity and heart disease. The hero of the romance movie has become the villain of the bathroom scale. The industry's response was varied. Some companies leaned into the indulgence aspect, marketing their chocolates as a decadent, special occasion cheat meal. Others tried to adapt. This led to the creation of a whole category of light or diet chocolate products, a fascinating and often culinary, disappointing chapter in food science. To reduce calories, chemists and food technologists tried to replace the sugar with artificial sweeteners like aspartame or saccharin, which often left a strange, chemical aftertaste. They tried to reduce the fat by replacing some of the precious cocoa butter with other bulking agents or modified fats that didn't provide the same satisfying melt in the mouth feel. The results were often waxy, oddly sweet, and fundamentally unsatisfying. They were a shadow of the real thing, a testament to how difficult it is to deconstruct and re-engineer a food whose magic lies in the perfect synergy of its core components. A lesser-known and particularly strange detail from this era of health consciousness was the rise of carob. For a brief period in the 1970 seconds and 80 seconds, taro, a powder made from the ground pods of a Mediterranean tree, was touted as the healthy alternative to chocolate. It was naturally sweeter than cacao, contained no theobromine or caffeine, and was lower in fat. It was sold in health food stores in the form of bars and chips. Anyone who lived through that era can likely recall the taste. A vaguely sweet, slightly earthy flavor that was disappointingly, emphatically not chocolate. The carob fad was a perfect example of the era's anxieties, an attempt to find a guilt-free substitute for a beloved food, which ultimately just proved how irreplaceable the original was. But was chocolate really the dietary monster it was made out to be? This is a point of significant scientific and historical debate that continues to this day. The blanket condemnation of chocolate in the late 20th century was an oversimplification. The villain was not necessarily the cacao bean itself, but the form it had taken, a highly processed confection loaded with sugar and, in cheaper versions, hydrogenated vegetable fats. The conversation rarely distinguished between a mass-market candy bar with 11% cacao solids and a high-quality dark chocolate bar. It was all just chocolate, and it was all bad. This lack of nuance set the stage for a dramatic reversal, as scientists began to look closer not at the candy, but at the bean itself. You stand in the supermarket aisle, a witness to this moment of peak conflict. The chocolate bar, for so long a symbol of comfort, love, and accessible pleasure, is now a source of anxiety. Its long and complex journey seems to have led to this point of rejection. The sweet, milky, mass-produced confection that was the pinnacle of its 20th century evolution is now seen as its downfall. It has been made so sweet, so comforting, so accessible, that it has become unhealthy. The cycle is poised for another turn. The world is about to get tired of rice cakes and unsatisfying carob bars. A rebellion is brewing. A rebellion that will send us looking for answers not in the chemistry lab, but back in the history of the cacao bean itself. The sterile, brightly lit supermarket aisle, with its anxieties about fat and calories, begins to transform. You find yourself in a different kind of store. It's smaller, more elegant, and has the quiet, refined air of a wine boutique or an art gallery. This is a modern, artisanal chocolate shop, a product of the 21st century. The shelves are not piled high with mass-market candy bars. Instead, they feature sleek, minimalist packages with names that speak of places: Madagascar, Ecuador, Peru, Vietnam. A customer, the same person who just a moment ago put the candy bar back on the shelf, is here now. She is looking at a bar of chocolate with a label that proudly proclaims 75% cacao. She is not looking at the calorie count. She is looking at the tasting notes, which describe flavors of red fruit, earth, and a hint of spice. She is not buying a guilty pleasure. She is buying an experience. This is the great reversal, the latest chapter in our story. The redemption of chocolate through the rise of high-percentage dark chocolate. After decades of being relegated to the junk food aisle, chocolate has staged a remarkable comeback, and it has done so by looking back to its roots. The very thing that the Spanish monks tried to eliminate, the bitterness, is now being celebrated as a mark of authenticity and quality. The mainstream driver of this change was science. In the late 1990s and early 2000s, a wave of scientific studies began to reveal what the 18th century doctors had intuited. The cacao bean itself is a nutritional powerhouse. Researchers, focusing on the dark, minimally processed forms of cacao, discovered it was packed with antioxidants, specifically flavonoids, which were shown to have benefits for cardiovascular health. They confirmed that theobromine could help lower blood pressure. Suddenly, the headlines began to change. A bar of chocolate a day keeps the doctor away. They proclaimed. Chocolate wasn't junk food anymore. It was a superfood. This scientific validation gave people permission to love chocolate again. But with a crucial distinction. The health benefits were associated not with the sugary, milky confections of the 20th century, but with dark chocolate, the kind with a high percentage of cacao solids and minimal sugar. This created a new market for a more serious, adult-oriented chocolate. You watch as the calculator in the shop offers a customer a small sample. This one is from a single estate in Bolivia. He says, "Notice the nutty undertones. This is a new language for chocolate, borrowed from the world of wine and coffee. The focus is on provenance, on the unique flavor profile of the beans from a specific region. This movement, often called bean to bar, celebrates the inherent flavors of the cacao itself, rather than masking them with milk and sugar. And this brings us to a fascinating, full circle moment in our story. As you taste a piece of this modern, 75% dark chocolate, you notice something familiar. It's not sweet. It's intense, complex, and yes, it's bitter. There's no chili pepper, no lumpy maize texture, but in its profound bitterness, you can taste a faint echo of the so-called you tried in that Aztec village so long ago. The journey has come back on itself, after centuries of trying to sweeten, tame, and soften the cacao bean. We are once again learning to appreciate its powerful, challenging, and authentic voice. But is all dark chocolate created equal? This is a point of quiet contention and confusion for consumers and experts alike. The term dark chocolate is very broad. A 60% dark chocolate from a mass market brand might still have a lot of sugar and be made from a blend of unremarkable, bulk-grown beans. A true, fine, or craft chocolate might have a much higher cacao percentage and be made with rare, heirloom cacao varieties that have been carefully fermented and roasted to bring out their unique character. The debate is about authenticity versus marketing. Are some large companies simply slapping a 70% cacao label on their bars to cash in on the health trend, without truly embracing the craft and quality that the label is supposed to imply? It's a debate about substance over style, and it's ongoing. The dark chocolate revolution has fundamentally changed our relationship with this food. It has split its identity into, on one side, you still have the sweet, nostalgic, comforting milk chocolate of childhood. On the other, you have this new, sophisticated, slightly bitter dark chocolate, a healthy indulgence for the discerning adult. It's a redemption story. The villain of the diet craze has become the hero of the health food world. By stripping away the sugar and milk that made it a global phenomenon, we have rediscovered the soul of the cacao bean. We have found a way to love it, not just for its comforting sweetness, but for its complex, challenging, and profoundly historic bitterness. The sleek, modern aesthetic of the artisanal chocolate shop begins to feel more like a laboratory or a vineyard's tasting room. The focus narrows, moving beyond the simple distinction between dark and milk chocolate into a much more nuanced and complex world. You are about to explore the concept that has become the new frontier for chocolate connoisseurs. Terroir. It's a French word, most commonly associated with wine. That doesn't have a simple English translation. It means the complete natural environment in which a particular product is produced, including factors such as the soil, topography, and climate. The idea is that the land itself imparts a unique character, a taste or place, to the final product. For centuries, we've understood this about wine grapes. Now, we are applying the same thinking to the cacao bean. You are at a tasting event. In front of you are several small squares of dark chocolate. They are all the same percentage, say 70%, and all made by the same coquetry. The only difference is the origin of the cacao beans. One is from Madagascar, another from Ecuador, a third from Tanzania. You are guided to taste them in a specific order. You start with the Madagascar. As it melts on your tongue, you're hit with a surprising and distinct burst of bright, acidic, red fruit flavors, almost like a raspberry or a cherry. It's vibrant and sharp. Then you cleanse your palate and try the Ecuador. The experience is completely different. This one is rich, nutty, and deeply chocolatey in a more traditional sense, with hints of banana and black tea. Finally, you taste the Tanzania. It's earthy and savory, with notes of cherry and a subtle, pleasant woodiness. This is the mainstream discovery that is driving the modern craft chocolate movement. The cacao bean is not a uniform commodity. Just like a Pinot Noir grape grown in Burgundy tastes different from one grown in Oregon, a cacao bean grown in the volcanic soil of one region will have a vastly different flavor profile from one grown in the alluvial soil of a river valley somewhere else. The genetics of the cacao variety, the specific microbes in the soil, the amount of rainfall, the way the beans are fermented and dried by the local farmers, all these factors contribute to the final taste. This leads us down a fascinating rabbit hole of cacao genetics, a source of much debate and discovery. For a long time, the cacao world was simplified into three main genetic varieties: the robust, workhorse forastero, making up the vast majority of the world's chocolate; the rare and delicate criollo, prized for its complex, non-bitter flavor; and Trinita Rio, a hybrid of the two. This was a neat and tidy story. To me, it turns out. Here's the quirky, lesser-known fact. Recent genetic mapping has revealed that this three-variety model is a massive oversimplification. There are, in fact, at least 10 major, distinct genetic clusters of cacao, and likely countless more regional subvarieties. The cacao family tree is far more diverse and complex than we ever imagined. Where heirloom varieties, once thought to be extinct, are being rediscovered in remote parts of the Amazon. This genetic diversity is the raw material for a whole new world of flavor. But how much of the final taste is truly the terroir and how much is the post-harvest processing? This is the great debate among chocolate makers and experts. Some argue that the fermentation process is the most critical step, and that a skilled farmer can take average beans and, through a masterful fermentation, create incredible flavor. Others argue that while processing is important, you can't create flavors that aren't already latent in the bean's genetics and its growing environment. The taste of place, they argue, is real and primary. The truth, as is often the case, likely lies somewhere in the middle. It's a complex interplay between nature and nurture, between the gifts of the land and the skill of the farmer and the cacao tree. This new focus on terroir and origin has had a profound social and economic impact. It has started to shift the power dynamic in the chocolate industry. For decades, cacao farmers were at the bottom of the supply chain, paid low, volatile commodity prices for bulk beans, with little regard for quality. The bean-to-bar movement, by contrast, seeks to build direct relationships with farmers and cooperatives. It pays a premium for high quality, unique tasting beans, rewarding farmers for their skill and the unique character of their land. It puts the name of the farm or the region on the package, giving them credit and visibility. You look again at the three small squares of chocolate. They represent more than just different flavors. They represent a different way of thinking about chocolate. It's a move away from industrial uniformity and toward agricultural diversity. It's a recognition that the story of a chocolate bar begins not in a factory, but in a specific patch of soil, in a particular corner of the world. The journey that started with a single, divine tree in a Mesoamerican rainforest is now branching out, exploring the incredible diversity of that tree's descendants all across the globe. We are, in a sense, finally learning to taste the map. The intellectual, connoisseur's world of terroir tasting fades into a much more familiar, intimate setting. You are in your own home. Late at night, the house is quiet, the day is done. You're looking for something to help you unwind, a small comfort before you head to bed. You open the cupboard, and there it is, a bar of chocolate. Maybe it's a creamy milk chocolate, a nostalgic taste of childhood, or maybe it's a square of that fancy dark chocolate, a sophisticated little treat. You break off a piece. It feels like the perfect end to the day. But as you let it melt on your tongue, a contradiction arises, a clash between culture and chemistry that lies at the very heart of chocolate's modern identity. The comfort it provides is a soothing, relaxing ritual. Yet, the bean it comes from is, and always has been, a stimulant. This is the great paradox of chocolate as a bedtime snack. We have spent this entire journey tracing the stimulating properties of the cacao bean. This is the core scientific and historical fact. We saw it fueling Aztec warriors for battle. We saw it powering Montezuma's reign. We saw it keeping Spanish monks awake for midnight prayers and fueling the political debates in London's chocolate houses. The reason for this effect is theobromine, cacao's signature alkaloid. Like its more famous cousin, caffeine, theobromine is a stimulant of the central nervous system. It increases heart rate, widens blood vessels, and promotes alertness. So the question is, why on earth would we eat a stimulant to help us relax and go to sleep? The answer lies in the complexity of its effects and our perception of them. Theobromine stimulating effect is generally milder and longer lasting than caffeine-S. It doesn't typically produce the same sharp jolt or jitteriness that a strong cup of coffee can. For many people, this gentle lift is experienced more as an improvement in mood and focus rather than a state of high alert. Here we encounter a fascinating bit of biochemistry that many people don't realize. Chocolate does contain caffeine, but usually in much smaller amounts than theobromine. The darker the chocolate, the more of both compounds it contains. An ounce of dark chocolate might have around 20 milligrams of caffeine and a hefty 200 milligrams of theobromine. For comparison, a standard cup of coffee can have 100 milligrams or more of caffeine. For most people, the caffeine in a square or two of chocolate isn't enough to interfere with sleep. But this is where individual sensitivity comes into play, creating a major point of debate in the worlds of nutrition and sleep science. Are some people more sensitive to theobromine effects than others? Absolutely. For one person, a piece of dark chocolate before bed is a harmless, mood-lifting ritual. For another, particularly someone sensitive to stimulants, that same piece of chocolate could be enough to cause restlessness and disrupt their sleep architecture, even if they don't consciously feel why. Sleep studies have shown that consuming stimulants too close to bedtime can reduce the amount of deep sleep we get, making us feel less rested the next day. The debate is ongoing. How significant is the effect of theobromine on the average person's sleep quality? There is no one-size-fits-all answer. This paradox has deep cultural roots. We've been conditioned to see chocolate as a comfort food. This is the legacy of the Swiss inventors, the Quaker paternalists, and the Hollywood marketers. We associate its taste and texture, the rich, melting sensation, the perfect blend of fat and sugar, with feelings of safety, reward, and emotional release. This powerful psychological conditioning can, for many, override the physiological stimulating effects of the chemicals within. The ritual of the treat, the moment of quiet indulgence, is itself a form of relaxation. The comfort it brings to the mind may be more powerful than the stimulation it brings to the body. So, use it there in the quiet of your home, with the last taste of chocolate melting on your tongue. You are a living embodiment of this contradiction. You have just consumed a substance that an Aztec warrior would have used to prepare for battle, but you've done it to prepare for bed. You are caught between the ancient truth of the bean and the modern invention of the candy. Is chocolate a sleep aid or a sleep disruptor? The answer is, frustratingly, both and neither. It depends on the person, the type of chocolate, the amount consumed, and the time of day. It is a food of wonderful, delicious contradictions. Its identity is a tug-of-war between its stimulating chemistry and its comforting culture. And as you get ready to turn out the lights, you are left with the final, unresolved question of our journey. In the battle between theobromine and nostalgia, which one will win tonight? The quiet of your home deepens, and the specific questions about sleep and stimulants begin to broaden into a wider, more reflective panorama. You hold the wrapper from the chocolate you just ate, a small, tangible link to an immense and sprawling history. It's a simple object, but it contains multitudes. You smooth it out, looking at the modern branding, the ingredients list, the place of origin. Every word on it is a station stop on the incredible journey we've just taken together. You look at the name of the brand. It might be a heritage name like Cadbury or Hershey, and you think of the Quaker utopias and the mass-produced bars for soldiers and schoolchildren. Or it might be a modern artisanal brand, and you think of the intense focus on terroir and the revival of ancient cacao varieties. The very name connects you to a specific philosophy, a specific moment in chocolate's long evolution from a regional commodity to a global powerhouse. Then you glance at the ingredients list. Sugar, the first and most transformative addition, the key that unlocked the bitterness of the Aztec brew and made it palatable to the European tongue. It's the legacy of those Spanish monks, experimenting in their quiet monastery kitchens. Milk powder. You can almost see the Swiss Alps. Feel the frustration and eventual triumph of Daniel Peter as he finally figured out how to blend the creamy smoothness of his neighbor's invention into his chocolate, creating a gentler, more comforting confection. Cocoa butter. You think of Van Houten's ingenious press, separating the bean into its constituent parts and, in the process, creating the very raw material that made the solid chocolate bar possible. And then there's the main ingredient, cacao, or chocolate liquor, whatever they call it. It all leads back to that one place. You are transported, for a final time, back to that humid Mesoamerican rainforest. You see the strange, pod-like fruits growing directly from the trunk of the Theobarmic cacao tree. Food of the gods, a name that has proved more prophetic than its Greek originators could have ever imagined. You see the whole procession of history flash by. You see the frothy, bitter, spicy liquid being poured from a height into a golden goblet from Montezuma. You see the disgusted face of a Spanish conquistador for tasting it for the first time. You follow the beans across the ocean in a leaky galleon, a strange and unloved cargo. You witness the secret experiments in monasteries, the high-stakes games in London chocolate houses, the royal marriages that carried the recipe across borders. You smell the strange medicinal concoctions in a doctor's study and hear the clang of the first industrial presses. You see it shaped into bars for soldiers, packed into heart-shaped boxes for lovers, and demonized by diet gurus, only to be resurrected as a health food. What is the ultimate identity of this food? This is the final, unanswerable question, the one that historians and anthropologists will always debate. Is it a stimulant or a comfort food? A sacred sacrament or a profane indulgence? A to love colonial oppression or a vehicle for social reform? A junk food or a superfood? The astonishing truth is that it has been all of these things. Chocolate is a chameleon, a mirror that reflects the values, desires, and anxieties of the culture that consumes it. Its identity is not fixed. It is constantly being renegotiated. The mainstream historical fact is that no other food has traveled such a long and winding path, from a localized, bitter, sacred drink to a global, sweet, ubiquitous confection. Its transformation is unparalleled. A strange but true final tidbit. The modern global chocolate industry is worth over $100 billion a year. A commercial empire built on a bean that was once traded for tomatoes in an Aztec market. The journey from the divine to the everyday, from the sacred to the profane, is complete. You are at the end of a 5-0-year-long supply chain. That small piece of chocolate you ate was not just a snack. It was a history lesson. It was the product of conquests and kings, of monks and merchants, of inventors and innovators. It was the taste of a dozen different cultures, all melted together into one single, delicious bite. The food of the gods has finally, completely, made its way to your kitchen table. A quiet and humble end to an epic story. The story is over now. The long, winding path of the cacao bean has led you right here, to the edge of sleep. The echoes of history, the drums of the Aztecs, the clatter of the galleons, the whir of the factories, are all fading into a soft, distant hum. The details begin to blur, melting away just like a piece of chocolate on the tongue. What remains is a feeling of warmth, of comfort, a sense of a journey completed. You can feel the weight of your own body, safe and still in your bed. The air in the room is calm. The gentle background noise of the fan, or the quiet hum of the house, is the only sound now. Your breathing is slow and steady, a quiet rhythm in the stillness of the night. Each breath is an anchor, pulling you gently down into a deeper state of relaxation. Let the last thoughts of the day drift away like clouds passing in a vast, dark sky. There is nothing left to do, nothing left to think about. There is only this moment of profound peace. You are drifting now, floating in that gentle space between wakefulness and dream. The story has become a part of your own quiet landscape, its images and feelings weaving themselves into the fabric of your own unique dream world. Perhaps you are walking in a quiet rainforest, or sailing on a calm, moonlit sea. Wherever your mind wanders, let it go. It knows the way. Allow yourself to surrender completely to the pull of sleep, knowing you are safe, you are comfortable, and you are at peace. The end of the article. Good night.